Our modes of thinking are broken. My final warning.
But I want to be really careful to do this so that it can't be misinterpreted by anybody.
I'm gonna enjoy watching this.
Are you? Okay. Why would we as a society allow an industry the way in which
Okay, look, so there's LUTs. LUTs are essentially, I think I have some LUTs on here. Let's see. I'll give her some LUTs. So there's no LUTs right now. And so it just changes the camera. Let's do that. Let's do one LUT. It's just the filter, and that's fine. That's fine, but the LUT on here is like insane. It's like grimy. It's like they're filming a movie set in. It's like a little grime filter on a lot of movies, like the 2010s. A lot of movies set in like Afghanistan or whatever. And then the bass on this is insane too. The bass is like boosted. It's like if I took this, where's my change the bass here. It's like if I went like this, and I went like this, and this is what it sounds like to. This is what they're doing here, and it's just like retarded. There we go.
developmentally we come
It's like insane. The amount of bass is retarded.
to understand our potential partners really.
So I don't know how you mess this up. I guess they only have 500 viewers, so it doesn't matter. But still, it's unacceptable.
Important relationships that we form in a lifetime is something that has been built by selection in a completely non-intuitive way. If you stop and you think about the role that, for example, dancing, couple dancing, plays in the formation of these relationships, it is clearly in some way related to sex, and it is also clearly not the same. There's no obstacle, and in fact,
Let's talk about dance and jazz and sex. Jewish people, they'll talk about sex and jazz.
Formalized in.
What do you think about black people having sex?
In our culture, at least, that at one's wedding, the father dances with the daughter as a ceremonial fact.
They just have weird filters, LUT filters on.
There is nobody, I believe, on earth who can describe to you what
is the guy, like a Muslim? It's a prototypical British Muslim in America.
Role this is playing. But what we have is an embrace of the idea that this is somehow a way to spend time. It's entertainment. And so the idea is, well, why would we do that the way our grandparents did? We can dance in a big group, right? What does it matter what you're doing? If you're enjoying it, it's good. If you're not enjoying it,
it's bad.
Then don't do it. And we all get the logic of that. But the problem is, because you don't know what role
I need a footstool. I need like a hill to my feet on while I stream.
Ask the question. In cultures that have a tradition of
we haven't even made $100
before one commits to a marriage.
Crypto's crashed. I'm broke. My shorts,
anything to
my longs have been liquidated. I'm broke. I'm never gonna quit streaming. But one day I'll hit it. One day I'll hit the 10x long properly, and I won't get liquidated, and I'll be rich.
About whether or not they established whether or not the chemistry in the relationship was a durable type of chemistry or an ephemeral type of chemistry. So we don't even ask these questions because
Nick really destroyed us.
An assumption written into the way we interact that which is old is largely outdated.
Dude. Take us down. Did somebody go live?
Initial reaction to something is a good guide as to whether or not it's good for you. And, we can see in our relationship to food that's absurd. So, the question of sexual autism is really one of a disruption of the developmental patterns that would create a normal human capacity to interact on this particular channel.
So you asked about sexual autism.
Oh, is there grammar to radicalization transfers to others through hearing the word like anime movie? I don't even know what do you mean by grammar?
Which we invoke as a term that can describe people who are addled by porn.
Which is insane. Everybody talks so
And
much
the idea
nowadays. That's
is
where all they
that
do is talk,
autists,
talk, talk.
people on the spectrum,
Talking,
often react to the world as objects that cannot respond. And so they have fixed patterns, fixed responses to the world. And what porn can do is create a menu of sexual possibilities
You just
as
know she's yelling
opposed
about
to
porn.
allowing people to actually experience themselves and their partners as an infinity of possible experiences.
And this is 100% true. Women are 100% more coon-brained than men. Or I'll say this, a healthy woman, a normal woman, and a healthy man, the woman is still more coon-brained. Now, you can get insane men who are insane coomers, so they're just homosexuals. But dude, the infinity of sex, what does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything. The infinity of sex? That's not a thing.
Right? And so if you watch porn and you learn that what's on the menu is
on the menu?
items A through F, and that's it. And you even put aside the fact of the violence and the aggression, right? Like even if options A through F are all consensual and potentially enjoyable to both partners, when that person who's learned about sex through porn actually interacts with a real human being, they're going to think it's only options A through F, that it's a menu, right? And that's not actually how touch works. That's not how emotion works. That's not how human connection works. We aren't actually digital, right? As much as, Bret referred to us being robots in some ways before, this is one of the places where I don't like this language because it makes people think that we are limited and that there are sort of quantum states as opposed to analog states that are continuous. So, the human sexual experience can be almost anything. And porn would reduce that to a very small subset and say, this is what you do.
Thank you, Johnny Shark.
Furthermore, when your partner does X, if you haven't seen that in porn as well, you don't know what to do. It doesn't make any sense. And so not only is the list of possible sexual activities limited, but the list of responses is even more limited. And so you're going to be responding not by actual experiencing each other, but by sort of remembering what you saw elsewhere, which is not what sexuality is.
Game is so much better than the other game I was playing.
Oh, this is huge actually. I think that we kind of exchanged the depth for the surface layer interaction.
Yeah.
And the kind of sad part is that it's not like we exchanged maybe even our first sexual interactions with the surface level ones. Therefore, we learn it this way. Yeah. And there's one more. I had like a little insight where we have so many options, and we are like novelty seekers.
That's like a panda bear.
Well, just novelty seekers, right? Mm-hmm. And therefore, we kind of also exchange the eroticism, and the attraction.
He's talking about Bataille. And Bataille talks about this, dude.
Mistakenly thinking that the novelty is the attraction, and that's the erotic part, right? Instead of the depth of maybe one deeper interaction when there is, the physical touch and everything and all the menu, the limitless menu that we have as human beings.
Seems too easy though.
And I think this might be a problem. I mean, it might be even a problem when I think about my life also. Like, I definitely watch porn sometimes. I try not to
admit it,
partner. So
you admit it,
this is a huge
Busted.
thing, and I think we are kind of drowning in the novelty, and that it also is coming back to the topic we've talked about before.
Busted.
About the
is this Traxy on the stage?
The environment that are
actually sending K-pop. No.
Now not being
Traxy. Why don't you send K-pop?
Signals that are adaptive.
You've been a brokey lately.
Now
it's okay.
There's the increasing of kind of fake signals that are disruptive.
Very much so. Let me just start.
Yes.
We privilege a few senses over others, right? Like especially as primates, we tend to think in visual terms and
time out, ban him.
Consider, I don't know Czech obviously, but how many words are there for what you see as opposed to for what you touch? And we certainly can describe aspects of the things that we touch, things like texture and hardness and such. But the experience of touch, especially human on human or human on, your pet, right?
What?
Is
What's he
very
talking
hard
about?
to describe. And I don't know that is because we don't have the language, or we don't have the language because
I was
it's
always
actually
broke him in the red bed. That's okay, dude.
But
worry
all
about
of the senses other than vision are actually a little bit outside of our consciousness more than
The heck?
vision. And that does mean potentially that we can learn more in those spaces, even though we're not as expert in them. And that also
Someone just
is
making
part
stuff
of
up.
what sensuality and sexuality is and what it brings to us. And like, we're not going to teach that in the school.
It doesn't matter.
Right? But also,
It's just about
how
making
could you
babies.
teach
It's not that
It's
complicated.
inherently through experience, and porn is the visual only. That's all it is, and it's flat. It's inherently flat.
Coping
I
about
want to respond to
anime.
a couple of things that you said.
Coping about anime.
Your
alert.
own experience.
Coping about anime.
Try to use this trick of turning down the sound to figure out what's really taking
Hentai
place.
coping. Coping about hentai.
The
It could never compare. It could
the
never
human
compare.
male is wired with
Hentai could never
two
compare to me.
general categories of sexual
Hentai could never
strategy.
compare.
One of those categories looks very much like the human female strategy of a long-term investment in a mate and offspring. The other one
Hentai could
is
not
what
compare
a
to
student
a
of mine
real
once called
relationship.
sow and go,
Brett, don't even think about it.
which is to inseminate someone and commit
Brett's
to
just
them not
trying
at all.
to. He's like,
That second
I'm
strategy
so sorry, Brett.
is so evolutionarily positive from the point of view of spreading genes at minimal effort that two things are true. One, men are inherently obsessed with that possibility if it is
Of what?
available to them. And two, females
I guess I wasn't listening.
highly resistant to this at an ancestral level because
trying to be
the
a-
cost of being inseminated
trying to have a
by
harem?
a male
Is that what he's
who will
saying?
not invest in
Brett wants
your
a harem?
offspring is so astronomical. The cost of raising a human baby is so high that it would be absurd to consent to such a thing at that
Brett's
price.
trying to get a harem
So,
going? That's crazy.
ancestrally, this was all clear.
That's crazy, dude.
Birth control is invented. It changes the stakes.
Brett's
It
trying to watch
allows
hentai?
females to behave like men if they wish to, because the cost of a sexual
knows
interaction
about this.
isn't high anymore, not inherently. But they are not wired to accept this as a trivial phenomenon. So many
game isn't
women
even
have
hard.
discovered that though they, I think wrongly, aspire to behave like men who are trying to have trivial sexual interactions, that they in fact find out that those sexual interactions trigger deep feelings, which then cause them to get hurt.
Yeah.
So
100%. Yeah.
that situation exists. But the question is, why would we as a society allow an industry to drive
Because there's money to be
both men
made.
and women to behave like men who are behaving badly? This
'Cause
is
there's-
not a smart
there's money
thing
to be
do.
made, dude.
It changes the nature of society. The second thing to say is that the sexual mind is
Deranged.
creative.
Oh. He's absolutely evil and
It is
deranged.
not an accident that human beings spend a lot of time thinking about sex. Sex is profoundly important.
Huh?
But what you're supposed to be doing is
Video games,
developing
cool.
your own sense of how this might work, which is a very personal, individual thing. To the extent that you are buying porn or watching porn that has been produced by
Buying
somebody
it?
who
Who
doesn't
buys
have
it?
your long-term interests at heart, what they have done is they have taken something from you instead of
This
being
makes me think
creative
his hard drive
sexual
is full
person
of
who has
stuff.
something to offer to
Anybody
a
with this many
partner. You are
thoughts in
now
this
a
level
consumer of ideas that are
is
driven by monetary
addicted.
incentive.
It's not that
So
complicated. It's just
you
criminal.
say, well, you watch porn, you try not to. I would
It's
suggest
honestly
two
not that
things.
complicated. And
One,
anybody who's talking about it to this
realize
level
that
is
you
probably
are
an
robbing
addict.
your future self, right? That you what you're supposed to be doing, that energy that has you focused on this topic, is supposed to be driving you to increase your
About
creativity.
20K of chain link. Good job, Beardson.
The second thing
When it goes up,
is
give
that
me
you're going to look at-
$10,000. And when it doesn't go up,
don't look at porn.
don't talk to me.
Find erotic content, and the distinction is relatively easy to understand. was this produced by somebody who was trying to say something about sex, or was this produced by somebody who was trying to make money?
I saw you play
potato that your mind
Brotato, and you failed.
That distinction is important. And
you couldn't beat level 2.
To take a position against porn,
pathetic.
to say this is dangerous.
You thought level 1 was hard. You couldn't beat level 2, dude.
That is a position in favor of sexual creativity and in favor of sex being so profoundly important to the bonding between partners that it should not be disrupted by these trivial economic forces.
Sex is for incels.
If I may just pick up on
Some people like sex
birth
are
control.
incels.
We haven't used the word hyper novelty yet, but
finally,
it's one
let's
of the main themes
let's
of the
use
book,
that one.
right? The idea that even we humans, with the greatest capacity to switch niches
Truly
and
powerful
to adapt
race.
to changes, have outstripped our own capacity.
I already beat the whole game. You beat level 1, like a
rate of
beta.
change that we
Level
are
beta
creating.
male. Of course you
And
beat that
part
one.
of how this
Not
manifests
level alpha
is
male.
with unintended consequences in the technology that we invent. And birth control is one such thing.
Boring
Birth
game for
control
people getting-
is
dude,
an
come on.
extraordinary innovation.
You know where you are right now? You're on
Opens
cozy,
up,
dude.
fully half the
You're with the
population
Groypers.
to be able to be in both a sexual relationship and to pursue a life outside of that sexual relationship.
Right? Who cares about this?
And what we see it
Sex is so
being
boring. It's like
used
you should get over
as,
sex by
in
the time
many
you're
cases,
15.
is exactly as Brett said, a way for
If you're still interested in
women
sex by the
to
time you're
act
17 years
as
old,
men
you're
at
a
their
loser.
worst, right? To learn how to do what, it's not so and go, obviously, if you're a woman, but to pursue that
Head is banned in
lifestyle,
the Catholic Church, by the way.
which
'Cause you
doesn't
can't be Catholic
really
and get head. Do you know
benefit
that?
anyone.
That's true.
It doesn't benefit the
'Cause that's sodomy.
individuals involved, and it certainly doesn't benefit society. And so that's not to say that birth control isn't net a societal good, and it's certainly
Talk to your
has
priest
been
about it.
extremely valuable
Talking to my
to
priest.
legions of women
Hey, I do.
and their partners, right? In order to plan when it is the right time to have a child, but the use of it to encourage trivial
Going into the confession booth
trivial
and talking
sex in
about.
which men are acting.
By the way, I just
women
keep
are
going
acting
sex.
like
Is that
men at
okay?
their worst is absurd, and it's one of many ways that we are
I'm not Catholic
we
yet.
are in the
Epic life
21st
hack.
century misunderstanding the vast tools at our disposal.
When you stop being
It's
a
also
monster in
true that
bed,
you can infer something about the importance
I can become Catholic
of
now.
what we've
I
lost
had my fun.
by the huge fraction of the narratives that are at the core of our culture that is dedicated to the interplay between primarily men and women as they navigate these relationships.
Sex is not hard to navigate.
In fact,
What are you
all
doing it in a
sorts
dark
of
alleyway or something?
traditions, that we may recognize as
Game
antiquated
too easy.
are
I get
actually
migraines playing this game.
evolutionarily straightforward in terms of
I think it
their,
hurts my head after
their
like playing
role.
it for a few minutes.
The comparative sexual
easy.
reluctance of females compared to males is obviously adaptive. The choosiness of females, the
For what?
competition between males to win the attention
have clout.
of
It's not
females,
hard,
all of
dude.
these things make sense, and they're written into the structures that we are increasingly abandoning. So, the process of courtship, that it may take months,
blah, blah.
and that this may be an agonizing process. Sexual desire may be so great and frustrated by the slow pace of
Sounds
progress.
retarded.
These
Waste
things
of
have been
time.
radically altered by birth control because, of course, the obvious reason not to have sex is gone.
The other stuff to
But
do.
the degree to which that long-term romantic interplay, very asymmetrical. The role of men and the role of women is just different in that process. It serves to both
This is Brett.
test whether the relationship has the structures necessary to successfully partner in the raising of children, which is so profoundly important. But it excludes men who would play games and pretend to be romantically involved in order to gain sexual access. All of these things have clear evolutionary meanings, but because they are described
Now Chad
in
gets the girl
antiquated
instead of the
language,
nerd.
and because
Why do they always go
the
for bad?
structures
Why do
are
good
remote
girls
to
go for
us,
bad
we
guys?
feel we've moved past
That's my
that.
vibe.
We're more enlightened, but in fact, what we are is
Now they
less
go for the
enlightened.
jocks instead of the thoughtful
To me,
nerds.
it comes back like
They're always going for the
to sex
jocks
again.
now
It's,
instead of the nerds.
do I understand it
What's
well?
wrong?
That's, we can, for
What's
example,
wrong with this
the sex
fucked
itself,
up
we can
world?
perceive
They're always
it
going for the
through
jocks
one
instead of the
category.
nerds.
And the category is like maybe according to the rules that we are like extracting from the digital environment.
Thank you, Tony
So
Zero.
we are acting in a way as
The adults in the room,
we
yeah.
are incorporating some role that we've seen somewhere, some rule.
Doesn't
But we are
matter.
blind to
If you think about
other
this stuff, you're a
categories
loser.
that are relevant for me because like through sex, it can be the way of testing if we are compatible with this partner. So there's much more communication
O.J. Simpson
going
solved
on.
that.
Like all the touching. And
O.J.
all
Simpson solved the
hormones, all
compatibility
all the
problem.
bonding. And
You don't need to get
actually
plan B. You just
getting
gotta
rid
have
of
the
that
O.J.
and
Simpson
focusing on
mindset.
this one category that is a lot in today's world.
O.J.
I
Simpson was
think
kind
a
of
lot of about
base.
performance, a lot of about comparing myself to others.
O.J. Simpson was kind of the goat.
I'm not aware actually about the creative sexual mind.
Jovian, come on,
Like,
dude.
I'm silencing the creative sexual mind down, and I'm acting like as someone else, basically.
Yes, we learn to act like
She's gonna
characters that
school
we've
this
seen.
nerd. School this
Other
nerd,
people's
Heather.
scripts. And
School this
I mentioned
incel
a menu
nerd,
of possibilities before.
School
It's
this
also like a
virgin
multiple
nerd.
choice test. Like, in what world can we imagine that what we want to be deciding what to do has
School this
been handed
virgin
to us
beta.
by people we don't know, who have interests that aren't ours?
Show him
and
why
who
you wear the
actually are trying
pants
to
in the
make money
house.
from us. Why would we accept what we are, all of the possibilities of what we are from those people?
What is she even talking
It doesn't
about?
make sense. And exactly as you say, this
We need like
all
vats.
of what we do.
We need
can be
like tubes or
creative,
babies
and
can be
there is a
grown.
nearly infinite
That's gonna solve a lot of problems.
set
I'll
of
tell you that right
possibilities
now.
of what we can
Robots.
do in terms of sexuality and everything.
You don't even have sex. It just
And
creates a
instead,
baby.
in almost every domain, we're being funneled into these narrow choices that have been
That's what I
decided
want.
on outside of our view and outside of our interests, and
Just a
we
robot.
accept them.
Push a
Why do we
button.
accept
Easy
them?
bake
It's a
oven.
little easier. There's a lot
10
to
minutes
think
later, you have a
about.
full-grown baby.
We think we're focused over there instead, but every single one of these, if we break out and say, actually,
Get
your
some bitches,
choices, A
dude.
through D, no, none of those. I'm going to figure out something else. And maybe it turns out I'm going to come back and actually I'm going to accept a little bit of A and a little bit of C, and that's good. Or maybe there's Q.
Really, artificial
And you
wombs
didn't
are,
get anywhere
like
close
would
to
solve
that.
a lot of problems.
And this is actually
It would create a lot of problems for
innovation
certain people,
that's
but it also would solve a lot
maybe
of
just
problems.
good for me. And maybe it's also good for other people.
good for
and as long
humanity.
as it's not also bad for other people, let's go. Let's see what we can experience.
So I wanted to add something, though. I want to try out an idea.
This game isn't even a
The idea
game.
is-
It's like a screensaver.
Imagine that there isn't
For
really
retards.
such a thing as
No wonder Beerson
having
likes
sex.
this game.
That is the wrong description, because it suggests that a person does this thing and that there's some other person involved because they would have to be. What's really true, let's look at the ancestral past. In the ancestral past, sex would have been vanishingly rare outside of a
Thank you,
committed
Johnny Cellphone.
relationship because the cost to females of having sex frivolously was so high.
Yeah, waste of time.
In such a context, when one
The cost is still really high. It's a waste of time. It's
accomplishes all
retarded.
of the things necessary to actually engage in a sexual relationship, that relationship is then extremely personal, and it is extremely particular to the two people involved. They are both exploring a realm that they know exists. They've seen it depicted maybe, but they don't really know what it is, and they discover it together. That co-discovery
Discovering
is-
what? Swimming?
It is the stuff of human bonding in the most extreme sense. You have visited a somewhat forbidden realm
No.
together with another person.
Danger
and
is more extreme.
You can't exactly
This isn't
would be
dangerous
wrong
or
to
retarded.
describe it outside of that relationship.
Traveling.
So it is a fusing. It is
Driving
a
around the
fusing force.
Montana in the winter,
And,
driving
you
around
know,
Montana and Wyoming with a
just
broken
by
car
analogy,
in the dark with no
If
headlights.
we decided
That's more of a
that there
bonding
was
experience.
something, there are pure colors and there's something called mixture, right?
Going on
mixture
adventures.
is when you take more than one color. Okay, but if I describe mixture, I've denied you a literally infinite range of possible hues that could exist by mixing these two.
he's
in
gonna show how to
particular
fuse.
ratios. So the point is, any two people could engage in this thing that we generally say is having sex, but
Incel.
that does not describe what's supposed to be a fundamentally unique combination that one discovers and is private and is not discussed broadly. So that is something that we have lost, and we don't even realize that we were robbed of this. Right? We are that rapid to embrace.
It wasn't that
the ways
good.
of being that seem
was just
more
never that
modern,
good,
that
honestly.
we don't realize we gave up.
Our
something
life
that
just doesn't
profound.
suck enough that we think sex is cool.
And suddenly it
Our
comes
life
back,
is too awesome for sex.
to the language and the
It's
trend
like
of
bemoaning the lack of
because
reading books and books
the
suck.
language is
in these video
I
games.
want to describe the mixture. I want to describe what happened there, right, in language, and I'll give that to someone, and someone's like, "Oh,
Sex is for
It was like,
brogies.
okay, I don't need that, maybe, or whatever." It was like that. It was A, B, or C.
Is this esoteric
But suddenly
miscegenation?
coming up with a solution.
I don't know. I'll have to think
come
about
up with
that.
a solution to go into the deep.
So Brett is the sex
with someone.
expert. of the
and
Weinstein
experience
clan.
things which are beyond the language.
Yes.
It's like
Outside of
sex is
language.
cool, but
Outside
like,
of
stuff is a lot more
Absolutely
cool than
outside
that,
of language.
such
And
as like
so
video
much
games,
of human
onion dip,
experience actually can be.
espresso.
Yeah.
But because the
From
way
your
we
own
communicate
espresso
is
machine.
primarily linguistic, we forget this.
Yeah.
And we're doing it
Video
now,
games.
right? And we're
Or
talking about a book
Thunderbirds.
in which we did it as well, right? This is all language focused. But
Music,
when
rap
you
videos.
are having sex with someone, or hiking in nature, or swimming in the river,
or all at the same time.
or climbing a mountain, you're mostly not talking. Maybe on some of those experiences you are, but for me, that's
Dude,
not.
she's
It's
humiliating
outside the
him.
linguistic layer, and there is
Brett's like,
more
"Please
to
don't
be
talk about
learned
this."
from not trying to impose the
Alpha,
conscious. What do I
Heather.
think about this, or what?
Heather
else
going
is,
deep
Oh,
here.
we're talking about something else now, but I'm trying to experience this thing with all of my senses, and actually, that's what I want to be doing now. And then
Brett, shut up.
time,
He's telling us that Brett, shut up.
consider it. Maybe later, depending, we can talk about it.
you
And
doing
we can
penance
come
for
to
something,
understand
Paul?
What it meant.
No.
This to come back to the animal behavior, right? Like this part.
never do
part
penance
of
for
what we
anything.
can do and understanding
I
humans,
live a charmed life.
Watching other people and turning down the sound, as Brett said, is
When you're a hermetic
don't pay
master like
attention to
myself,
their language
Edwin,
either.
you never get
As
punished.
you're watching them, try not to internalize what they're doing in terms of terms that you already know, in terms of interpretations that you already know. Just
Jackpot.
watch. And this is easier if you're in a space where you don't know the language. So it's easier to turn down the language if you don't
Dude, they're
know,
vibing.
right?
Brett's
So
just in
this
the
is one
in
of
the corner and they're
benefits
vibing.
of far off travel. It's one of the benefits of us being in Prague, where we try as we might a little bit. We can barely understand a couple of little words, and so
Bro, Brett's being
sounds
cucked by
like
this alpha
music, but it
Prague
doesn't sound
guy.
like lyrics, right? And so we can watch people and say, okay, I'm seeing.
I
it
learned
here
from the
in
Hermetic
action,
Arts and shit
I
you
have
do.
no
I
idea
tried,
what
I
they
couldn't
think is
escape, dude.
going on because I don't understand the words.
I make $75K a year. I'm broke. Dude, that's more than I made last
Listening
year.
to this conversation, which has actually been this is a
Can we fill up this
stimulating
bar tonight?
conversation to have with
Fill up
people
the
who are
bar
interested-
tonight. I'll show you my
interested to
hairline.
have it. And I think I would sum up the perspective that we're developing. If you can describe it,
Thank you, Dude Muff.
you're not doing it right. Right? That's the thing. Right?
I mean, this is
I read the Kabbalion
this
in my
is
life. It's never the
actually,
same.
something that's
After
been
I
alive for
said I
us,
can never forget
with
this
Christoph,
information.
because we've been
This Kabbalion.
kind of exploring.
I wish I
the
could, but I can't forget
three
it.
cognitive sciences.
I can't remember to
where
forget
there's
you, in the words of
embodiment,
Shakira and Rihanna.
extended mind, and all these things, which are actually going beyond the
Dude, what was
language.
that? Dude, it's like a
It
power
feels like
move.
the language is
Putting the cookies inside
It's a
here.
label that is
And
kind
they blow
of
up.
constraining.
they get
it's
trapped
actually affecting
inside
how we
the-
perceive the world itself.
Dude.
And then, Heather, you said something really interesting where
The riz on this guy is unbelievable.
follow something.
I'm putting the explosive cookies inside
I
the
don't know
maze so it all
exactly
just keeps
you said,
exploding.
but it was the feeling I've had
Great.
of you saying that. It was like
You can go here.
you follow something, but then you
Yeah,
can,
dude, look at this. They're never going to
can
get
try
to
to
me because I have the
explain first.
cookies.
but you follow something, the feeling or whatever is coming, right? You're silencing the mind and the interpretations and the labels and the language.
It's this game.
you do that,
Screensaver Deluxe.
And then suddenly, you didn't know why you did that, but then suddenly there's the realization of explanation that is going
This
to
game
come
isn't even a real game.
afterwards.
This is like a
So you don't
splash
have to
game
know
for
why you did
idiots.
everything
Especially not in the moment,
exactly.
right?
Dilbert,
Exactly.
I'm a sex
And-
wizard, really?
So this is something we've had.
this Scott or Dilbert?
Camp, kind of transformative camp.
gonna let it
where
run
we
like
do a
this
retreat
until I
with
die.
Ethan Kobayashi, and he goes into practices that are actually training you to do that.
Yeah.
To be able to be in the moment and to follow whatever. Oh, there's an apple. Oh, I want the apple, right? Wherever there it, and then you have a tendency to run somewhere. You have a tendency to do something.
Yeah.
And then it feels good, and it regulates you, and it's
Norwood
But I'm
3,
being active,
you'll never know until you
therefore
fill
I
the bar
must be being
tonight. dude.
productive in the
Let's fill the bar
world.
tonight.
Now I'm being
Can we
effective.
fill the bar
and
tonight?
productive.
Somebody sent a 10K donation. Let's get 10%
One more
done.
thing, there was this thought of
If I fill up the bar before
traditions
July,
in
I'm
here.
going to
We've talked a little
retire
bit
for
about
the year.
traditions, and there's this thought of tradition is some kind of solving mechanism, or is solving a problem that we no longer know that is there.
Who cares about sex?
So
Only a
therefore,
European
we
would
should
care this much
maybe
about sex.
Get rid of all the traditions because it
Americans know
bring
it's
up a lot
not
of
all
problems
that,
we
dude.
forgot we have. So
Not that
that
important.
was another thing that I've kind of was there.
If I may pick up for a second, there are trivial versions of what you're talking about, where you come out of a movie or a piece of theater, and the people you went in with say, "Oh, what do you think?" Like, I don't want to pass judgment yet. I don't want to speak what I thought yet. I don't know yet.
Speak your truth.
Let me consider it. So that doesn't matter that much. But a profound version of this is actually how innovation in science happens. And we think of science, many people think of science as not being.
I think of science as sex.
As that's the domain of the arts. Science is about numbers. It's about analysis. It's about logic.
Talking about Eric,
and we can write
She's
it.
Talking about her brother-in-law. She hates that Eric.
Describes a lot of the part of science, but not the actual origin of the idea, and the origin of the hypothesis, which stems
the
from
null hypothesis,
observation,
the alternative hypothesis,
from letting your mind go free, from letting it float free and not forcing it into particular domains.
She's talking about hypnotism. She's talking about being in a trance.
What you think you know and what the world thinks you know, and letting it come to you. And then letting it move around in your head a little bit, and then starting to drill down on it and say, okay, what?
I'm 3 centuries old. Nice. And all it took was 3 centuries to become a mod in my chat.
I base that observation.
It was all worth it.
And
3 centuries of black magic to become a mod in a cozy
the rest of
TV
the
channel
is indeed
chat.
Fairly analytical and logical and careful, but if scientists are only spending their time in that space, they're not going to innovate. They're not going to discover anything new.
Who's more of a hermetic wizard, Edwin Boyette?
Your theme, I think you're describing
what Playboy Cardi in the chat
as being in the zone when you're just simply you flow through something rather than thinking.
Thank you, Big Bongo.
And
you don't have to defend me that I don't care or notice because I'm not paying attention.
In the book, which is consciousness.
I don't even know if I was on Twitter today.
The way I think people should understand.
I don't think I was. Actually, I might have been.
Your conscious
I don't remember.
mind is a tool for addressing novelty. It is not the tool that you would
use. Have you played Cave Story?
No. That you know well.
I've heard of it. I don't even know what it is.
It's not thinking their way through a piece. They are flowing their way through a piece.
Flow.
Somebody who's really
state.
good at a sport is not thinking about what they're going to do next. They intuit everything and they move in a seamless way. And as soon as they become conscious, they choke. Right? So we ought to aspire to live our lives as much outside of consciousness as we can.
Get that money here.
Everything about it is novel and not in an interesting way. Just go to the supermarket and look at the ingredients.
Bring back coins with the band timeout, people. Only if somebody donates $100 and I'll start that up again.
I don't know what to think about whether or not I should eat them. It is a conscious question where there shouldn't be one.
I need to get
be able to go to somebody who produces food.
The luck ones.
And they will have put the thought into what's in it.
I'm out of here.
Require your conscious
Actually,
mind.
You know what? I'm going back to
delicious
the
or not.
I feel like I beat the game like that.
A world full of novel.
I feel like I can't lose this level if I
constantly activating
just stay in here,
mind, but with no useful product.
Because I have just so much power with these cookies just blowing up.
You just puzzle over unresolvable questions. That's the opposite of the world we should aspire to. A world that is intuitive to us, in which flowing through the world is not a conscious activity.
Stop doing yoga, Brett.
Our conscious mind to
Brett spent so much time doing white woman yoga.
That tool is appropriate. That's the world we should be seeking to create. It's the world that we should be arranging for our children.
Coin flip war would be profitable.
Confused creatures by the time they mature, but they are actually creatures.
I feel like you need more interesting stuff like
focus
debates and stuff going on for coin flip war.
It's truly sad that we're not doing this.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of the centipede paradox, that if you ask centipede which of your limb is moving the fastest, and she will focus like, okay, which limb is moving the fastest, and the whole system.
It's not a paradox.
Like it just crashes. Like
it's not a paradox.
She can't function. And
a paradox
I think it's happening of what
I always
lie. Just said that
that's a paradox.
We can function on these.
I'm currently lying.
Autopilots of our rational mind.
That's a paradox. What are you talking about?
Centipede
paradox.
And by autopilot,
a real paradox would be I'm lying right now when I say
I'm
this.
just start like explaining things, and I'm in this rational realm that is actually like.
Have a good night, Edwin. Nice to see you. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah.
What also like
Kwanzaa,
learned
Diwali,
us is like
Easter.
That I think that we can guide these intuitive feelings also with questions.
Shemitah, or whatever
because
it's called.
We are so good at like rationale.
Holidays.
So we can use our rationale to get to our like, intuitive feelings. And one of these questions is like for us,
these flowers are weak against my power.
What's alive in you right now? this like kind of question is actually like
Paul Time made like $80 one time off
forcing
Michael
you
Time
to
Bammy.
focus on your
Yeah, but Michael's
feelings, on
broke
your,
now.
like,
He didn't get a
intuitive
gift
realm,
card
and
for
suddenly
Christmas,
it's
so he
not
has no
like,
money.
oh, like this movie, yeah, like I think it was really good and it has like this ratings on this platform. And
Edwin
this kind of
Goya,
things,
very
and
funny
this
Bob
rational
Dole.
automata is going on, and suddenly,
Let's get that.
I don't know, like it was so strong that I need to have some time to put pieces
This
together.
nigger even talking about?
And suddenly, like
I said
different
it's a
kind
soft
of
day. It wasn't
the
at all.
language is going from different place, not from here,
Yes.
but from the whole.
What did you,
Did you know the Holocaust didn't
How
happen?
did it make you
I
feel?
just thought you might want to know that the Holocaust didn't happen.
I'm going to push back here a little bit because
Well, I was like in a trance for a
there is
second there.
a
What just happened?
when I used to be a professor, I used to have one exercise I would do where I would get students to describe to themselves what their dreams were like, right? Without talking
Tourette's.
to each other.
Actually, I have
Have
Tourette's,
them
guys.
Describe it to
I just
the
realized I
class,
have
and It
Tourette's.
was universally shocking how different our dreams are from each other, right? Our minds do not look alike.
Or
on
the
the
religion of the
inside. We
Holocaust is so
function
funny.
differently. And so
You can just say the Holocaust
I
didn't
know
happen,
that I
people
have
freak
this
out. It's like,
experience with
doesn't
a
matter.
movie, right? So Heather
Even if it did happen
does
and I'm
not
wrong
want to immediately react to the movie. It
in a
develops
different
over
world,
time.
who cares?
I'm wired
It
different.
literally does not matter. It doesn't change anything. I said that.
Right.
Nothing in the world has
I-
changed.
am thinking about the movie as I'm watching the movie. But here's the weird part. I know that I'm also doing the thing where I'm experiencing the movie and my conscious mind is really...
The Real
just
Hermetic
like a
Wizard, I did ritual 10 minutes ago and haven't had a
spectator.
drink ever
So I
since.
know
Good
what I
job,
think
dude. I'm
about
very
it at
proud
the
of you.
end, but I will often have the experience of my conscious mind thinks this movie is corny, but some part of me is like holding back
You
tears.
talking about the
right?
Wes
It
Anderson
reaches
movie?
me,
Is he talking
and
about Asteroid
my
City
conscious
now?
mind is like, yeah, but the story doesn't really hold together.
Yeah, but Asteroid City
so,
sucks, dude.
You know, it's that conflict with oneself that at least is a regular part of my experience. But I wouldn't doubt that is
Modern
not
blasphemy is
universal.
retarded, yeah.
I mean, that sounds like
The
a match,
Holocaust
too,
didn't happen.
for what I experienced.
It's like,
But I would say
Who
also
cares?
that
It doesn't matter.
the time that you
Just like it
take
didn't happen.
before you deliver a judgment allows both
It just
the
didn't
rational,
happen. I'm
the
sorry.
conscious mind, if
It's
you
just
will,
not real.
and the
No Jews
cultural mind,
died in the
perhaps,
Holocaust.
to find connections.
Barely any Jews
within
died
the
in like World War
analytical
II. Maybe
space,
like 50 or
that
60
they
of
could not
them.
have found, maybe.
Maybe
So
a
maybe it
hand, a
wasn't very
dozen, a
good
baker's
movie.
dozen, perhaps.
But maybe it actually had some.
Maybe like a
connections to
baker's
other
dozen
things that you
Jews
know
died
that
in the
you just
entire
haven't
World War
remembered
II.
yet, right after
I
you
don't know,
watch
dude.
it, right? So just letting it letting
Who
it
cares?
steep, letting it
I'm not
percolate.
Jewish.
I don't know how many metaphors I can have for liquids here, but but
Maybe like 5 Jewish people died, and they were all
for a
rapists
while.
and bad.
Such
Maybe like
that you
15
come to
Jews died,
understand
but they're all
something
bad
more.
people.
It's not just that you're waiting for the emotional
racist.
response to fill you, but you're waiting also
I don't know.
for
It doesn't matter to me.
the analytics to mature.
It doesn't really care. I don't
Well,
care. dude. It doesn't- Who cares? It's not
I will
relevant to
now
me.
watch movies differently.
Maybe like
Try
one
to
Jew
figure out
person.
what my
Maybe one
mind is
Jewish person
doing,
died,
but
named Adolf Hitler
I
during World
often
War
feel
II.
like in the case I described where I'm clearly emotionally reached by something.
Full
that
cover
my
Cat
conscious
Williams.
mind is-
Who's Cat Williams? I feel like I know the name. I don't know who it is.
It's often there's a character and the predicament.
37
of this
Jews died in World War
character
II,
is
and they were all
particularly
ugly. True.
Resonant for some reason.
They were all
and
ugly
the
incels, so
character is
who cares,
embedded in the
honestly?
universe that isn't.
Maybe I would care about Jews if they weren't all
Well,
incels.
But it doesn't matter.
Maybe if they weren't
because I
all this
still feel
ugly
like,
beta
that
beta male
character is
incels from
embedded in that
R9K on
movie, but
4chan.
I get them, you know.
I just don't care.
This is amazing. This is.
But if I did
producing,
care, I'd be a Nazi.
The feelings like
Because they're cooler.
it feels like me at least.
I just got
I'm
stuff
going
going on,
beyond
dude. I
language a
just
little
too busy
bit.
to care about
obviously,
something retarded
we
like
always
that.
go beyond the language, kind of like I'm trying to feel through what's happening here, and it's a huge thing for us. Like we are, following you for a few years, and now we are sitting, in front of you face to face. This is amazing for me. Anyway, I wanted to go
Because
into
you sound like losers. I don't know,
the
dude.
cultural realm.
I'm not with that
versus
nerd
the
stuff, that
conscious
nerd
realm,
history
but
stuff.
Before that, maybe.
The Holocaust or
Can we go
nerd
back a
stuff?
little bit?
Nah, I don't really care, dude.
And
Sorry,
just,
I'm busy. Get
you know,
bitches. Sorry.
come back to the campfire.
Get riches,
How
get bitches,
important
Get
campfire
stacks.
is for us,
Get cool,
and
dude.
what's beyond just warming ourselves
This
up
nerd
and
history
warming
stuff's
our
for
food.
betas.
It's part of what we're doing here.
Wah.
right? This is a
Oh, the
kind of
nerd's gonna
campfire.
talk to me now? No,
So let me
I'm
just
good.
lay out the model.
I'm good. I don't really care, dude.
We described a little bit earlier that human beings exist across a wide range.
not a
of
big deal to
places,
me, I
and
don't
That's a
really-
very unusual thing for species.
Stuff happens
to do.
every day in my hood,
There really
bro.
aren't other species that do that.
There's a Holocaust every day
The
in
way
my
that
hood, bro.
happens is that new
And it's
software
actually
programs
real.
need to be written. So
I don't care,
if you
dude.
think
Who
about,
cares?
for example, the predicament.
I don't think
of the
you can. I don't think I
people
can
who live
lose if I'm
in the
inside here.
Arctic. These are people derived from Asia who who at the
More
end of
stuff
the
happens
last
in my
ice
hood
age
every day,
moved
dude.
into
I don't
the
care
Americas.
about
They first moved
this
into North
nonsense.
America and then rapidly spread to South America.
Europe's soft.
These were people who
In my
had
hood,
a way of life.
It doesn't matter. Europeans couldn't last a day in my hood.
They
Europe's
had
soft.
control of fire.
Light
They
work,
did not
dude.
have agriculture. These were hunter-gatherers living under difficult conditions. And then at the point that they
What's this guy even talking about? What's
reached
this nerd even
below
talking about?
the ice sheets, when they had gotten south, they were
This
faced
is what
with
games
two
are for
continents
Zoomers, by the way. This is like
that had more
Zoomers
people
play.
in them.
Cookie clicker
that
with
had
colors.
a huge
Cookie clickers for
diversity of
epileptics.
opportunities that they knew nothing about. They had been living for thousands of years in this one place with one.
Yeah, Europeans wouldn't last a day in my. They get
And they
body,
had
dude. They get their chains around, their
indefinitely
pockets
large
around,
number
their
of
chains
habitats
yanked.
to
If you're a
explore.
European, dude, you're
So
soft.
as they expanded across
Holocaust
those
is
two
soft, dude.
continents,
Go to Chicago
they
on
would
the
have
go to Chicago New Year's
discovered
Eve. See what
animals
happens.
that they had not known that could be hunted.
Go
They
to
would have
Chicago
discovered
Halloween
plants
weekend.
that
See
they
what
could
happens.
eat.
You're
They
gonna
would have
you're gonna find
discovered
out your
that other plants
Holocaust
were
is nothing
toxic.
compared to
They would have
streets
learned
of
these things.
Chicago, dude.
How would it have happened? Well, as we were saying before, the conscious mind
You wouldn't last a day in the hood.
purpose is to confront novel circumstances. As people moved into a habitat, during the day they would have been struggling to figure out what to do with these
Hitler didn't even
opportunities
sip
that were
lean.
so
Who cares?
new. But at night,
Everybody was
because
like
we are
lame,
diurnal
goofy
creatures and our
back
eyes
then.
do not work well at night, it would not be productive.
Hitler didn't even have a Glock
stumbling
with a switch
around
on
in the
it.
dark
So
trying
I'm supposed to
hunt
care
and
about that,
gather.
dude.
So they
Shut
would
up.
have gathered around a fire, and the natural thing for a human being to do is to say, you know, I saw this thing today, and they would
I read the news today.
place
Oh boy,
the knowledge about it into the collective realm.
dude, I can't lose. I think I'll honestly beat the final boss with this.
Because I
with
have
this
to
get
notice
up
this
here.
other thing, and I wonder.
There's so many
if, and,
explosions.
you know, I saw this creature, and it looks like a so and so, but I don't know how we would hunt it because its behavior is this and that. And what would happen is they would end up parallel processing the
Parallel parking.
information
Whatever.
that they could gather from the environment. And the key thing is that parallel processing is even better than what we can do with computers that parallel process.
Yeah, MDMA is
These would
cooler
have
than
been
meth.
Individual people who had lived different lives. that
Meth,
had a
because we
shared
smell crack.
mechanism for
We
exchanging
smell crack in the
very
hood. Let's
precise
get out of here with your
abstract
meth beta,
concepts with each other.
soft boy shit.
And they're different strengths.
All right.
They're different types of creativity. They're different experiences.
World War II sounds
that
like a bunch of
allowed
beta males.
the-
Sounds like a bunch
the
of light work.
lineage to produce answers that were far
Nerd
superior
stuff.
to what each of them working.
We're taking your
separately
Adderall,
could have
studying for your math
produced,
test,
even
Hitler.
if
Who
they
cares, dude?
compiled it.
Everybody
The
involved is
whole
a
greater
nerd.
than the sum of the parts.
Nerd war.
That capacity would have allowed them to discover a new way of being consciously. And then once it was understood well enough to function, that conscious construction, clumsy, like uncompiled computer code, would have been written into a much more efficient package that could then be passed one generation to the next. It would not have been inherently literal.
Chill out, dude. Chill out.
It would
My
have
chat
just
needs to
been
chill out.
catchy. It would have been narrative. It would have been stories that told you how to think about the various hazards.
Dude, I'm not even
and
trying. I'm
opportunities
just
that
goaded
would
with
then
this
be passed
game.
vertically
So
through that
easy.
culture.
Game so easy,
Now,
dude.
that culture
Not even a
exists on
challenge.
whatever patch of territory that way of being functions on. And at the edge of it, the puzzle repeats. You get to the edge of that
What is this nerd
habitat,
even
and
talking
again,
about?
we don't know these creatures. We don't know how to live here. We don't know how to find water. And that question of gathering around the campfire, exchanging observations about this new set of puzzles, and figuring out, bootstrapping a new way of being, that's the stuff of
Legends.
human diversity.
Nerds.
So that would have filled these two great continents full of literally hundreds of different cultures. And it would also have allowed each culture at the point that its opportunity
Humans
had been
suck. I'm about
exhausted
to-
to generate a new way of being in place. So that immense behavioral flexibility is the it is the fundamental difference between humans and other creatures. And campfire is this central concept because you have this apparatus that is incredibly capable of observing and deducing, and at night it is not in a position to be productive. So what does it do? It teams up with others and it exchanges the data.
There's a dynamism that you describe here that we have described in the book with regard to individuals going out alone sometimes, or in smaller groups and then coalescing around a campfire, right? Smaller groups coalescing into larger groups, parallel processing. But I feel like there's a fractal version of this with humans all the way up to global, where anthropologists refer to fission fusion groups among hunter-gatherers that spend
I'll do the next
times
level.
in
Okay.
smallish family bands,
This game's
20 to
hard.
30
It'll be
people
easy
or
for
so,
me.
and then come together once a year, once, a few times a year on some reliable schedule and come together into larger bands. And they're exchanging people, they're exchanging mates, but it's mostly about exchanging ideas, exchanging information. And that also keeps them able to communicate with one another. So that keeps the lines of communication open in terms of language evolution. But maybe more to the point, it allows innovations to spread. It allows culture to spread. And so I think that this fractal dynamism, if you will, at the level from individuals going out and coming back to the campfire, all the way to small groups
What's this dude even talking
coalescing
about?
into larger groups occasionally.
What is the little bro even talking about
Once a
here?
year, is part of our long-term ancient history, and it's one of the things that we are not doing anymore. The dynamism is failing, right? That we have a global
What is little
economy,
bro
a
even
global
talking
world,
about?
and we have our screens that at any moment we can tap into everyone and anything that's online already, right? And so instead of there being like an organic periodicity to like we're going to come forward at night, we're coming to the campfire. If night is falling, we're going to come to the campfire. If it's March on the Kalahari, I'm making that up, but then we're coming together into the larger group, as opposed to, oh, I have a minute, I'm waiting in line, I'm going to go here, right? And it creates chaos in our minds because instead of
What's the Kalahari? Is that a
organic
real thing?
periodicity, we have at any moment I'm going to plug back into everyone, and really we have lost our ability to spend time completely alone or
turn off
in
your phone,
smaller groups
go outside,
and
it's
not
not
have
hard.
the outside intrude.
So this is interesting because I think
Does Bret
it's
Weinstein ever
analogous
disagree
to
with his
the
wife?
question about porn, because
Wait, what?
on the one hand, you're absolutely right about us having lost touch with how to be alone with our thoughts, right? The addiction to the device causes us to occupy
I like
time rather
green
than to allow the mind to wander, which that's toxic, and we have to fix that. But there is something. I love your idea of the fractal campfire. I think this is right, and there is something like that alive. The podcast world, for example, right? As you say, this is a campfire of sorts. How does it work? Well, we're having a real conversation. That conversation will go out to many, and they will pick up that conversation. Now, the problem is they will pick up that conversation in an environment that is not neutral, in an environment that has an opinion on what we should conclude. And we've been living this throughout COVID. But the
They're never going to get
fractal
over
campfire
COVID.
that desperately needs to be born in order for humanity to function properly is being disrupted by forces that are partially just foolish and economic and partially interested in us not being able to think independently of them. That there are
Brett kinda looks like
conclusions that we need to
grandma.
reach in order to
Dude.
keep the power structure
I
stable.
like Brett. I like these
And
people.
unfortunately,
are awesome.
it's going to
I
prevent
respect these
us
people.
from discovering
These people are
exactly the things we need to
geniuses.
realize in order to get humanity
Those
through this
snakes,
very
dude.
dangerous
Snakes.
moment.
Nah, whatever.
So I do have hope that fractal campfire exists, and that,
The fractal campfire.
as dangerous as the
Humanity.
devices we're using are, if they were leveraged in a different way, they could be a very positive force. And we've seen a lot of positivity, but we've also seen it disrupted.
Just to kind of sum it
What's
up
this?
even for myself is like
I guess let's go down the screen.
There's a quote from the book: "The linking of minds is at the root of humanity's success." With the linking of minds at the campfire, right? And so
We're
we
going
said that
camping?
humans are generalists platform, but as individuals,
Is Bret Weinstein on the
we
list?
can be
No, none of the
specialists.
Weinsteins are on the list because
And
they're all
then
nerds.
we can share the specialty that we
Bret
have
Weinstein's a nice guy. I don't
with
think he can
others.
go on. He's a
And
nice
therefore,
guy.
this is the compounding effect.
I would trust Bret
us
Weinstein if he
sharing
told me
the thing.
something.
And
That was,
there's
like, about,
amazing
like, what's
study
going on.
done. There
He's-
has been some
he's like a
problem
great guy.
that they gave to people. Only 10% of people could solve that problem. But if they gathered people in groups of 3, it wasn't 30% of them solving the problem. It was 80%. 80% of the groups of
Not
3
listening.
people
Me not
have been
listening.
able to solve the problem. And this is amazing. And
Kill this guy.
That's a
dude.
fantastic result.
Yeah. And there's
Let's get him in the
another
corner.
quote from the book.
Yeah,
We
in the corner
accurately
now.
pass a complex abstraction from one mind
I've seen they're not invited to
simply
the
vibrating the air between
pedophile
us.
cookout.
It
Dude.
is everyday magic that usually passes without our notice.
He got invited, but his wife told him no. Good for her, dude.
We as biologists and we have studied neuroscience. For us, it's literally a magic. It's like my brain is activating your brain right now. Your
Literally magic.
feedback
It's
is
not.
activating again my neurons. This is amazing. This is really
No, it's not magic. It's
really
language.
magic.
It's a tool, dude. It's not
for
magic.
myself, I've called it like everyday transcendence because my the speech
This
is
isn't what
transcending
magic is,
myself,
dude.
you're
Magic is
transcending
different.
yourself.
Talk to Playboy Cardi
Brain VR.
and Big Bongo about magic.
That's it.
One brain is talking and others are like lighting up.
I can use my brain to,
essentially it.
yeah.
And so
I've learned how to use my brain to control my mouth.
it again feels like, we have this quick thing that we can do, pick up our phone and go into the surface level abstraction of, and language. So we are getting back into language instead of us being at the campfire.
False hairline
exchanging.
better? No.
There's much more
Only if you
information
actually maybe
beyond
I guess you'll never know
itself,
unless
right? So
you
we are again at this
send in
the same
$100,000.
ideas with porn and all these things.
Let's get it going.
So
Let's get up
how
to
do we-
$2,000 today.
How do we do that? How do
Alright.
we? Okay, we can.
Everybody said
create a
$100.
podcast for
Everybody in chat
ourselves.
send us
That's our
$100
campfire.
so that way we
How
can get
can
up to
people
2,000.
Create their own campfires. How can we do this?
Well,
How
I
can we
think
do this?
the key thing to
Europeans
recognize
be
is
like,
that there's
"I'm
a theme
retarded."
that unites all of the,
I like
stuff
you,
we're doing
retarded
wrong in all these different
European.
realms, which is that, and we should get back to the relevance of the difference between what's going on in the Czech Republic and what's going on in the wider West.
Nothing's
But
happening in Czech Republic. It's
the-
just Czech Republic, dude.
power of
It's like a zoo
unfettered
in a zoo.
capitalism in which markets will return any answer that makes a profit, is to turn us
glowing
into
skulls are starting to piss me
consumers
off.
in places where we are supposed to be something else, right? It is turning us into consumers where we are supposed to be citizens. It's turning us into consumers where we are supposed to be
Producers.
creative participants in sexual relationships. We are becoming consumers even in our own mind. It's how we see ourselves. And these devices, because they deliver us the stuff that we consume, are an important piece of that very toxic
Knocked this guy to the
puzzle.
corner.
So at the
He's
point
stuck
you
now.
look at all of the things that you are consuming, that you are actually supposed to be producing, right? Every human being should have a relationship with music, which is not just simply listening. You are supposed to.
Gray
be
hair
producing
means you're
music, every
wise,
human,
Langley. Good
until
job.
a few
Or you have a
hundred years
vitamin
ago
deficiency, but I forget which one it is.
participated in group singing.
It's one of those
Many
things.
would have played instruments, but nobody would have been passive in these realms.
Either you're wise or you're really dumb.
So I think step one is don't be a consumer anymore and give up on the modes. In
Everybody
which,
makes stuff that nobody pays attention to.
I have become maybe the only vocal opponent of the idea of entertainment and recreation.
I like that. Okay, this is why I like Bret.
Fun.
That's why I like Bret, dude. He's awesome.
This is, I think, not true. The point is,
It's not true.
Bret's so
these
awesome,
are the
dude.
trivial versions of something profoundly important. If your relationship with comedy,
No fun.
is just
I agree,
simply that you
dude.
go and you listen to funny things, and
No
you
fun
laugh,
allowed.
but you
I
don't know how
love
to
this
make
guy.
a joke. Well, there's an opportunity for you.
This
just
is my
learning.
type of guy,
Even
dude.
the discovery
No fun allowed.
that the very same words delivered almost exactly the same way produce a totally different reaction depending on the timing of the way you deliver the punchline. We don't even know what that means. It's obviously profoundly important, but we just, we
Joking is
come
just how to avoid
understand
responsibility for
ourselves
anything. That's why
as
Jewish people and
something we
Irish people are
aren't.
good at
And
comedy.
I don't know
And
if
Jewish people
you
aren't
had
good
it.
at
It's
it, but-
possible that you were
Joking is just a way to
shielded
trick
by the
people
Iron
into
Curtain
being okay
from
with you
the
being a piece of
horror
trash.
that is laugh track.
That's all that joking around is.
American
It's just
television,
how to get away with
There was
doing
a
bad
huge
things.
range of not very
died? How did I
interesting
die?
comedies, and they would take. There was literally a library
it.
that the tiny number of people who did the job knew very well, in which they could take laughs from audience that had been recorded separately, and they could infuse them into something that you were watching. And
No,
that
100%.
would
Being
cause
funny
the
is the
people at
ability to
home
get away
laugh.
with doing bad stuff, being a piece of
Which is
trash.
telling you that it wasn't the content that was making them laugh. It was the
So you don't
sense
get in
that they
trouble.
were in a room full of
Either
people
you
who
end
thought
up
that was
following the
funny and
rules
they
or you're
should be
really funny
laughing
and you
too.
get away with anything.
This is a mind-bending
Which is an evolutionary advantage. It means women like funniness.
that we would do such a
means
thing
you're
to each
rated
other.
up.
And yet, economically speaking, it was the obvious thing.
One more thing with regard to helping people create campfire, I think is, and we don't do this, but we know people who do successfully, is a
Campfire?
return to Sabbath,
The heck?
is having
Dude, it's so funny.
a day.
We
and
don't
it
do
could be a
Sabbath,
day
by
a
the
week,
way.
and it could be a
By
different.
the way, Brett, I don't allow Brett
a day
to
a week
practice
is
the religion of
a
his
good
ancestors. I'm Christian.
period to use
I'm
because
Heather,
we
I'm
have a
Christian.
work week that is defined.
Brett is not allowed to
in
be
which you
Jewish
do
around here.
not pick up the phone.
Brett isn't allowed to be Jewish around here.
And maybe you will define the Sabbath in different ways for modern times, but at least that, in which you do
She's
not go into
rewriting
that global
Jewish
world that
holidays
is
to her own,
remote.
whatever she
And
wants to
you
do.
only engage with those who are
practice
actually
Christmas.
in your presence. That I
Thank
think
you.
would
Party
help
sent $5 chat,
tremendously.
send money,
Many
Merry
people
Christmas,
actually
Paul.
create campfire on the regular.
And of course, your allusion to Sabbath points to the fact that every religious tradition has some ritualized self-denial, and presumably some fraction of these are about addictions.
Dude,
and
why are you dressed in a woman's?
building the
He's just like a woman.
capable of controlling addictions.
not cool.
So they don't run your life.
It's gay.
Of course, we banned it because it's
Wearing a woman's fur jacket as a man, unless you're Macklemore,
It's now
gay.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, doing a media fast, if you will, a screen fast, is presumably just as good for you as
Slim
doing an
fast.
actual fast. Right? You know, cleansing your body of all of the intakes, the actual physical, chemical intakes, is known to have health benefits, and so too should we cleanse ourselves of the very modern toxins.
Yeah, it's actually like connected to addiction that we tend to put the locus of control, or our locus of control is put like
You say
in the
locus?
outside world. So
There's an Asian man on here?
scrolling like passively, when I'm passive consumer, I'm actually letting things automatically to my mind and influence my future behavior, and I'm not thinking about it. But what's happening also
The locus of
is
control.
that these things, like every like, every share,
The locus of
like
control.
support of my social status, it's releasing the dopamine in my brain.
Look at the
And
social
dopamine has like
status,
its
dude. I
conserved
care about
function in
bands.
evolution, and it's
Social
like
status, I
highlighting
loser.
something that should be like
Well, I want
important
you to
for
like
me,
me.
and some behavior that I should repeat in the future because it leads to some
Okay,
kind of
retard.
reward. But what happens like in today's world
Get rid
is
of these-
the
these skull
dopamine, like
magicians.
the dopamine distance and also dopamine in time, it's shortened. So
Speak
I can
English.
pick up my phone and I can have the release of dopamine on demand, and that's like
Demand.
the term,
Yeah,
like
alright.
cheap
Fake
dopamine.
language,
Like, the
LARPer.
locus of control is outside,
No,
and
the
it's
dopamine or
also
demand- I
like
mean
supporting
demand.
this like addictive behavior of releasing this like kind of cheap dopamine, and it's
Retard learned
teaching
about
my
serotonin
brain
and
that
dopamine.
these things are important to me, but also it's silencing the harder things to get in the world. For example, the dating market. Like it's easier to pick up my phone and install some dating app than to go to the coffee room or something and ask
coffee
someone
room?
out.
Europeans are
it's
unreal, dude.
Yes,
These are not
it's
real people.
hijacking my decisions, my real
Europeans aren't
decisions
real people,
in
dude.
the world.
These people are
And,
bizarre.
Like, part of that.
Part
Is
of
passive
that.
consumerism. There's a really
Ave.
nice concept, differentiation between passive and active consumerism. That you need to be curator
Whoa,
of
what's
your
up,
digital
Shinji
environment.
Papiro?
You actually need to put a bit of this locus control inside yourself, but it's very hard to do that. Like these because of this
Stupid
dopamine and
veal.
addictions are
Stupid
so
veal.
conserved in our
Barn
in our
animal.
system.
So
Enslaved
I wanna
goy
just
barn
refine that
animal,
a little
dude.
bit. For
Dumb
one thing, I
cattle,
wanna
dumb
point out
European
that this
barn
is,
animal, cattle freak.
quite resonant with something that our older son Zach said to us.
Okay,
He made an
American
observation.
perspective.
I wouldn't
Smart,
have spotted it
smarter.
otherwise. I'm not sure
Europeans are
either of us
retarded,
would.
dude.
But he said even the way people have altered their smoking is feeding into that same change in access to dopamine. So the idea is that there's
They
dopamine
legitimately don't know how to think.
available in very different
They are religious. They
quantities.
worship the Holocaust.
But the
and they're
ability to
retarded.
get trivial small hits is detaining us so that we are not pursuing big game, right? And, you know, the idea that it used
Talking
to
about vaping.
yeah, vaping compared to smoking a cigarette, right? A cigarette is I'm not advocating smoking, but
based.
a cigarette is a level of commitment, right? Because it has a cost
get
and
me
because
to
there's
this
an amount
weird-
of time that you take, right? It actually is weirdly regulated in some
It's true. Smoking
more
cigarettes is
human
actually
form
healthier
than something that
vaping.
you can have
in
exactly
terms of
one hit of in no
nicotine.
time at all. in
He's
between
right.
here
Brett's
and
just
there.
goated, honestly.
So that
I love Bret Weinstein. He's smart.
it's almost like a meta addiction.
True.
You are addicted to the little hits of dopamine, and it keeps you from detecting that you are bypassing access to huge hits of a much richer set of rewards because, I mean, I don't know. We're not video gamers, but there must be a video
Level
game
up.
analogy where there's lots of trivial little rewards and you're so busy with them that you don't strategize how to get to something important. And it really, the tragedy is, as silly as that sounds, this is squandering human potential. and
Sure,
human
vape.
potential for the
No
reason
more
that you
vaping, no more
described,
fun.
these miracles.
I'd vote for Bret Weinstein for
capable
president,
of, that
unironically.
you're just applying to
First
nothing.
lady, maybe first man.
When in
I'd
fact,
vote for
your
Heather
life could be
Heyer.
full of meaning. There's plenty to do. This is a moment at which, frankly, much hangs in the balance. But you're going to be occupied with things that 5 years from now you won't even remember why you cared.
True.
I think like the game is a really good analogy here, because when you're a gamer, you can
I'm listening.
actually spend a lot of time in this like virtual space that was designed for you because you're not a programmer, but you are missing on a world that actually you can design your own game in the world
Called
itself.
real life. Okay, W.
Right.
W
And if you
European
think about,
retard.
compare the Shakespearean view of romance to
Shakespeare's gay.
the
No, Shakespeare had some good stuff.
modern
Shylock,
trivial version
Taming of the Shrew,
mating and
Merchant of
dating.
Venice.
The idea
W.
is there's a richer game that exists out there. We
Called
know
real
it
life.
exists
Called
because
Epstein
it's been
Island.
described in great detail. And we also know, I think everybody, if they think about it, will realize that there is a level of, I don't even know what
I was going to my
right
favorite
word
video
would
game,
be.
Real Life.
Reward is not right, but it'll have to do. There's a level of reward for finally winning the heart of somebody that
Oh,
you
yeah.
have passionately desired,
own
that you have
the woman.
feared would reject you, that you have been through all manner of tribulations.
He's
in
gassing up
order
his
to-
queen. I love it.
to get there. The idea, going to bed with somebody who has
He's
accepted you
gassing
as a
up his
result of a
queen. I love it,
long-term,
dude.
complex investment over which you have spent
What a
great
king,
deal of time
gassing up his
thinking about
queen.
the various risks. That is not the same experience. And to the extent that the way
Bret
people
Weinstein,
get to the
top lover,
relationship that would
2024.
generate that experience is through a lot of dating around, and this person does, maybe they're the one, that is a loss, even at the level of just whether you had this profound human experience at any time in your life, right? It's not going to happen many times, right? Maybe once if you're lucky, but that you would bypass it because there's some modern way of doing this that doesn't involve that. And maybe it wasn't even ever true. Well, yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was, and I had it.
In short, there is value not just in getting, but in wanting.
True.
Oh, yes. And
And there's value in keeping.
And aspiring and trying, right? In the
So true, Queen.
pre-success part,
Right.
there is value and enjoyment and passion and all of the good things as well. And
Dude, this
it's
game
not-
isn't even
there's not
hard. I'm
complete
not even
overlap.
trying.
You can't just get to the I have it stage and have acquired all of the things that you would have gotten by not having it.
absolutely. And the ancients knew this. And the ancients even, the tantric tradition
Ooh, let's get with-
obviously gamifies this, right?
Let's
the
get-
point is the denial
let's get
is
rizzy
used
with
to,
it.
to elevate the passion. And
And the tantric.
what I think is a mistake is to imagine that because that isn't how
Brett
it has
knows.
felt when
Brett
you have
knows. You just know Brett
adventured
knows,
in this
dude.
realm, that it was never true, right? There are things that are like that, but this isn't one of them.
This is also connected to happiness research that I'll mention just one thing, and it is that people that had to overcome some kind of challenges and had maybe longer, harder path towards their goal, they report to be happier than people that had it easier.
Yeah, of course. You have something to compare to.
Of course.
I think we should integrate again that the pursuit and the stress
Beta male speaking.
and everything, the hard times that are coming with the pursuit maybe of some big game that we want to play is part of the game and is part
Welcome to the
of
game.
why it
Real
fills us
life.
with something afterwards and maybe throughout even. Because if we had everything just by snipping our fingers, maybe
Snipping
we
our
wouldn't be
fingers.
so interested in that, maybe it wouldn't be as fulfilling.
Let me
There's
get to
this
this,
idea
whatever this box is
of,
here. I need to unlock a character.
of meaningful basically decisions or meaning itself, that we are losing it
Please.
because of making tons of decisions that are actually not affecting our life very much. We are choosing between hundreds of types of shampoos and stuff like that. Oh, what am I gonna eat? Am I or order Chinese or Indian or something? And so there's many choices, but actually if we go on to, I don't know, Tinder or onto dating app or something, if we go on to the
I guess
existential
the
decisions that are there
exclamation
before.
marks are like dangerous for me.
Now they are exchanged for something, for a swipe on an app, and then maybe I will meet the person, right? But well, if that doesn't work out, okay, I've spent some time, I've spent some energy, but I'm gonna have the alternative later. It doesn't really matter what I do, and
true.
this is creating the kind of meaning
You're right, it doesn't.
crisis in ourselves. At least it feels like that, right? Because
I don't even know what these niggas
okay,
saying, dude.
what am I doing here? Like,
Yeah.
You're
how does
bored,
my
that's
decision even
Get a
affect
job.
my life?
Get a job.
The stakes are too low.
Yeah, the stakes are too low.
Let's
And,
raise the stakes.
Brett, you said the reward of the relationship.
Pulls out a revolver.
after the,
He's playing
after
Russian
the hard
roulette.
times of winning someone's heart. It feels like the existential reward, kind of, because you are discovering the other mode of being rather than just getting, oh, I've just had sex with someone after 2 dates or something. So it's this idea of Eric Fromm, right? The having mode and being mode. The existential modes, right? Because the having modes is we have sex and I have this social status and this amount of money and all these things. But the me mode is cultivated by the depth of experience
I got that,
and
yeah.
my cultivation of character through, for example, the relationship is amazing example because you can't reach that amount of depth anywhere else in the world. At least I think maybe some psychedelic experiences or something like that. Maybe they would be even amplified with the person, right? That you have the depth with already. So that's something that's been alive right now. I'm not sure what it leads actually, but
I'm not even being pressed here.
The
not even trying.
your observation about
You can't even get
the
close to it.
decision making that we do that has no implication whatsoever. I mean, what are the chances that the choice you made on your shampoo affects the way your hair
Why is he
looks
balding
enough
guy talking
to
about
have a
shampoo?
consequence on what job you get or
It's like, I don't get
who
you're
you end
going
up
bald.
marrying, right?
Oh,
It's
you're
a
trying to
very
look at stuff to
low
make sure you don't go
stakes
bald. You're going bald,
phenomenon.
dude.
But almost everything is like this. We puzzle mightily over who we're going to vote for, and then it turns out
I
our
just vote
vote
for the
has almost no
racist
implication
Holocaust
on how
denier.
society runs for reasons
I
we
love
don't
Holocaust
know. But
denial.
it's
That's my thing. I
so
do.
we are,
That's
I
my
think,
thing now.
used
is
to
being
having these
Holocaust denying Nazi.
seemingly important
That's my new
discussions
thing
about
for
what to do,
2024.
and then it doesn't.
called
have any
denying the
impact. And What it
Holocaust.
causes people to do is miss the places where that's not.
That's
true.
my new thing. I care
So
about
if I can
actually
take one dangerous
proving the
example,
Holocaust didn't
a
happen.
lot of people made a decision about how to deal with COVID
That's really all I
based
care about
on
anymore.
that same principle.
Convincing
This
everybody the
was a
Holocaust
social
didn't happen.
phenomenon. It
And
was a
I'm
badge of
Nazi.
honor to take the vaccine, and those who didn't.
Bro, still doing a whisper stream? Dude,
morally
I'm not doing a
defective.
whisper stream. Kill
But
yourself.
they didn't understand. No, actually, they're
I'm
going to
doing
inject
an epic
something
stream.
into you, and it's going to interact with something called the immune system that you probably know nothing about. And the way it's going to interact with the immune system is going to have an effect not only on how you interact with COVID, but how your body functions going forward, how it deals with pathogens that you've never even heard of, right? Nobody seemed to understand that this was for real.
Little own.
And that the decision.
Oh, did I
was
get
a
one
difficult
guide?
one, and that
Ooh.
if you didn't have any basis,
Oh, I
to
got
make
one
it,
guide, huh?
that defaulting to the sort of social, well, my people are doing X, so I'm going to do that too, was incoherent, right? So
Yeah, no, this is an important connection, I think, because we have a kind of brand loyalty, right? We live in this social universe in which we think we know, and we are disappointed usually that the implications of our decisions.
Dude, I'm not even impressed right now.
And then we generalize to those things where the implications of our decisions are
Let's go
high.
further down the road.
And
Let's see.
we use the same social.
I did this in about 13
to make
minutes
those
before I win this
decisions,
level.
even when
bro.
it's physical manifestations in the universe.
yeah, we're using social proxies for things, even when, frankly, life and limb is at stake,
Yeah.
which is tragic.
Who's this retard?
It's
This huge
René
retard.
Girard's quote that we tend to
René
mimic
Girard.
desires
Is
of
that like
what other
the-
people
It's like the
desire.
sued guy that's
And
popular
we're
now.
actually blind what we ourselves desire.
Which is
Sued.
ironic because
René sued Girard.
actually you can become instantly richer by desiring things that are different than what other people want.
True.
If you
Facts.
if you desire what other people want, then
Facts. Every year in
it's
competition.
in high demand. If you
Find something that nobody else
realize,
wants,
actually,
and you're
I
good.
like this
You're
thing that other
goaded,
people
dude.
aren't so into, then the point is, oh well.
He Brett knows what he's
seems to
talking
be a
about,
lot
dude.
of
Brett is
So
correct.
it's funny that we don't
Listen
give
up,
ourselves
Brett's
a raise
wise.
just by cultivating the desires that are not standard.
Is the niche thing, right? Again, like be the explorer of the
Brett is a good
niche,
guy.
and
I trust him.
like get the competitive advantage, like which is there.
Absolutely.
Brett and Eric reminds me of
by logic.
Arsenic and Old Lace.
I wanted to ask
Mortimer
you, about you
versus
in the
his-
final
his,
chapter of your
brother.
book, you are describing like senescent civilization, and We talked about a lot of topics, a lot of things today, but I think in this chapter, it holds together like everything in a good way under this term. Could you please explain it a bit more?
What?
Sure.
It's like talking to
First, people need
Americans talking to
understand
Europeans
what
like
senescence is and
cavemen
why it happens.
being discovered by
Senescence is a not very familiar term.
a genius American.
Most people would use the term aging.
The European mind is like a
problem
caveman
is
versus
that
the American mind.
Everything ages just by virtue of time passing, but things like us, creatures, animals, as they age, they grow more feeble and more inefficient over time.
Yeah, like the European mind.
Recognize this intuitively.
Americans are still in their
reason
youth,
that
in the
happens,
20s.
We
their
now biologically
life.
understand quite well, which is that the genome is not huge. There are a limited number of genes. And that limited number
What's
of
going on
genes
with the
has to do
walls on the
all
end
the
there? I don't know what
stuff
you
of
mean,
the
man.
body,
You gotta
and
explain what you're
therefore,
saying.
Each gene tends
Speak English.
to do a multiplicity of things. There
I'm
will
not on
be
tutorial
times
mode. I'm on the hard. I'm
that
on
you do
whatever mode it
something that's
is,
profoundly good for you,
which is
early in your
easy. I'm
life
not even trying.
at a cost late in life. And what it took a
It's like
long
real
time
life. It's
for
like,
biologists
bro, I
to
thought it was gonna be
realize
hard.
was that when that happens, selection will prioritize that gene because many people in an environment like our ancestors lived in would experience the early life benefit, and they wouldn't live long enough to experience the late life cost. Or if they had, most of their reproduction was
Walls in the
already done.
studio?
And so
I don't
from
know.
an evolutionary
This
point of
this
view, a gene that
podcast
does
channel has
something very
500
good for you
subscribers,
early
so I'm
at
not
some
really
big
sure what's going
cost
on
late
here.
is a good deal.
So they have money to set up
So
the studio.
the genome accumulates.
So I'm not really sure
things
what they're
that work
doing.
this way, but it means
Seems like a new
we are
psyop
condemned
called the Retarded
to fall
Europeans, the
apart as we
podcast.
get older.
Retarded Europeans
Now,
talk to
the
smart Americans, the
Unsettling
podcast.
realization that we came to is that civilization is engaged in exactly
I'm so
this
racist against
process.
Europeans, dude.
And then there's an ugly punchline.
Not
I'll
even
get to
kidding.
at
They're
the end.
so primitive and retarded.
Civilization, because of the economic modalities
America's
that
just the
dictate
best.
how we are to navigate, does the same thing where
Europeans are
anything
primitive.
that produces a huge profit in the short
Their
term
minds
at
aren't
some
evolved.
delayed
They're like
cost
cavemen
will
compared to the
tend
American
be
mind.
reinforced, and we will build this into
Thank you for the follow, dude.
entire industries.
User underscore
For example, the porn industry, right? Terrifically profitable, and it's just destroying generation after generation.
You know who
of
runs the
people
porn
and
industry?
their
Heather told
fundamental
me.
capacity to interact in the most important way that they ever will.
They don't even have guns. Yeah, they
so
couldn't use them, so it's probably better than all allowed
Civilization's
to.
accumulating
They probably
these
shoot
things,
their
and the
eye out.
prediction is that civilization will
Guns are so funny because they're
come
so
apart
simple and not
just
scary.
like a person, you know.
As long
in
as you're
the
not being
90s.
retarded with them.
All you have to do is look at what's happening in the world.
Like they're-
You'll
you have to
that
be-
some process very
Oh.
like that is taking place. Our coherence
You don't
is
have to.
breaking
It's like
down in
you
front
shouldn't be
of our
retarded
eyes,
with them and
and
wave them
we
around. But
haven't
as long as you're not being
thought
retarded,
in
they're
those
like just a
but
piece of
the
metal
other
or a
truly
few pieces of
tragic
metal
punchline
and plastic,
is
and it's like whatever.
when
Just
we
a tool. It's like
senesce
holding a
and we
nail
grow
gun.
old and we die.
Paul, you're looking very Hebraic today. Yeah.
Natural selection.
Bob
has
Dole, don't
produced
make me ban you,
the
dude.
Perfect solution to this puzzle, which is that we produce offspring, and those offspring, notice, they pick up that fraction of what we accumulated, the important part of what we understood.
Bro,
as
when is this game gonna get
individuals.
hard?
Our children will
Not even a
pick up
game, it's
and
a
they will
screensaver.
dispense with all of the stuff, all of the nonsense, all of the bad circuitry, right? Now they will have their own confusions, but the point is selection has elegantly solved this problem. The elders, they will fall apart and die. The next generation will pick up the portion of the program that made sense. It will innovate new portions of the program, and they will pass it to their children. That is
Now I got to
the
dance
solution
around
to
the
senescence.
exclamation marks over
That
again.
is the solution, and society
Thank
doesn't
you,
have
Bob
it.
Dole.
We have
Good
no
observation
plan for how
and
to take
analysis.
the civilization that is breaking down in front of our eyes and birth a new one that can go on and take the good parts of what we learned and infuse them.
I gotta
in the future.
dodge
In fact,
exclamation marks
the
for the
most
next
likely
15
outcome
minutes.
is
Nice.
that the degradation of civilization is going to destroy the species because of all of the high-tech weaponry, all of the interrelationship, the huge population, the intense rate of consumption. That means that as we blink out, our civilization reaches its end,
Don't tell me
it
to
is very
subscribe,
likely
dude.
to take out humanity in the process.
We need to find the fractal
Ooh, let's go.
connection between the types of senescence, much as
Do that.
I think
We do
the
need to do that. You're
connection with
right.
Campfire at the individual level and the societal level.
You are so
is
right.
very
We need to
tight.
do whatever that
Actually,
was.
I think that works.
Whatever you said there.
And we can talk
That's
as we
really
do
important.
about civilization level
Dude, this
senescence.
dragon is no shot.
But it's not as tight an analogy precisely because you don't have elders passing things on to youngers within civilizations. Like you don't have younger civilizations. You have individuals.
Let's get rid of
within
this
existing
dragon
civilization.
retard.
So
There we go.
the body
Oh, I got the
politic
treasure? Okay, whatever.
is not the same thing as an individual body.
That's true, although presumably there will have been many instances in which the elders, the difference between
Zion.
the old habitat and the new one is so profound that effectively we're starting from scratch. So I do think at the moment, if we were functioning coherently, we would recognize the hazard of the moment. We would understand that it is a process of senescence that is doing this, and that reversing that process is
What's senescence?
unlikely.
What does senescence mean?
And
what
we
is
would
senescence?
engage in some
Senescence?
intentional version of
Senescence?
fractal campfire.
What does that mean?
At the
What
very
is a
least, we
fractal
don't take
campfire?
The species out.
These people are too
An
smart for
contingency
me.
plan that at least allows us to get through the bottleneck. But even starting with a fresh sheet of paper, and frankly, I think that fresh sheet of paper, the very top line should say, the global West. We need to found the global
You can't have
West.
the West and the East.
That means we have to take the values that the West discovered,
You
which
can't.
really
It's for
are
white people, dude. That's what
essentially
the
the
values are
ultimate
for.
values that one would want.
Only white people have these values.
Not to rig
It's
civilization.
even
in
Asians,
favor
even
of your
Japanese that people
population
like,
against
they
another
don't have Western
population,
values.
but
They
to
have
play by the same
Japanese
rules
values.
as everybody else. And then the question
even
is,
talking
well,
about?
what parts of what the ancestors had done in the West,
Like even like
parts of it
functioning
failed? How would you
societies like South
architect so
Korea
that those
or
same
Japan or China,
processes didn't
they
unfold in
aren't.
the future?
They don't have Western values. They have Eastern values because they're
You know, it's
Eastern.
lucky we have the
They're
technology
Asian.
to do this at the moment.
And they're
to
different
have
types
that
of Asian. What are you talking
conversation.
about, dude?
You know, this is an example of it. We have airplanes we can meet. We have ability to talk.
Michael, I don't know. I don't
solutions.
care.
And we
I'm
have
too
the
goyish,
ability
yeah.
to understand the problem at any level.
Problem is that
we
there's
choose to
non-whites.
study it. So I guess
And they
this is
don't
the
think
moment.
like white people. That's the
Part of it
problem.
may be that we kind of are failing to
The heck is this trash, dude?
integrate like naivety into the world, so like we can solve these actually like paradigmatic, like maybe really solid old
Dude, what is this
problems
nigga?
in a
Look
new
at this
way,
guy on the
like
left here.
what's happening when the old generation passes away
Dude.
and the new is born with some kind of like the main set of skills and thinking patterns that it's transferred from the previous generation, but they actually have this opportunity to think.
Am I going to be
from
like
the-
chased around in
not
a
from a
second?
blank slate, but from the slate that has.
Alright, let me get over it.
noise
Back up.
than it was in the previous like older generation.
Let me kill
So
these
they can
retards.
think of new solutions to problems.
I'm actually a retarded person.
And we
who
as
can't speak
society,
English.
as this like globalized
Speak English
entity,
here in
we
America.
actually miss this space where it could be happening.
You can't deal with these non-English,
Well,
not non-white, non-Americans.
Ironically, our trip to the Czech Republic has opened our eyes to
Get rid of
something
this.
in a way we were not
I don't like this
expecting.
crab. It's kind of freaking me out. He's so big. I
And
don't think he's
it's
that
a little
powerful.
hard
He's
to
just annoying.
describe. We have been watching the collapse of the West, and since October 7th and the attack in Israel, it has dawned on many people that not only is the West collapsing, but that it may be too far
Drown the
gone
dragon, dude.
to save it, because what we have seen is essentially every institution
Okay,
has
Brett.
been captured.
Come on, Brett. I like you,
and
dude. Don't
has
be
been
retarded.
repurposed for some
Join the winning side, Brett. The
non-public
Hitler,
spirited
the
objective.
Holocaust deniers.
What we find in the Czech Republic is a surprising example of a society that seems to be functioning according to the rules that
Of white
we
people.
thought had been lost.
It's just white people,
Now,
dude. That's what it is.
I
It's
know
white
what it
people.
means. We've been in Prague. Maybe it's different in the countryside. Maybe there are other
It's just white people who don't have
examples
black
that we
people or
haven't
Hispanics
seen.
or Muslims around.
To find even just a population, one
White
can
people.
feel it standing on a street, watching people walk by.
And it's mostly
They're
white
not
people, dude, right?
obsessed with the teams they are on. They're not
it's just
even
white
really
people.
paying attention to each other. They seem to still abide by this agreement to tolerate each other. And we also have found institutions here that seem to be working in the traditional way. So we've been
Get rid of this
puzzling
crab.
over
This
to
crab
be
dude's annoying
honest.
me.
And we have wondered, and this is really, maybe this is just a story. Maybe this has some reality to it. We're wondering if the history of the Iron Curtain, in fact, protected the Czech Republic, or will become the Czech Republic, from the corrosive influence of these unregulated market forces that seem to have destroyed the successes of the constitutional republics that we
October
traditionally
7th made me
of as
think
the
that
West. So
minorities have gone insane.
if you look at the music of Cuba,
Brown people are
music
crazy,
of Cuba
violent people.
was
That's what I found out.
from the market forces.
October 7th
that
made me
have wrecked
racist.
Music across,
October 7th made me
much of
a
the
white
world
power Nazi.
by the insulation of Cuba, the embargo, basically the isolation that they experienced under the Soviet regime preserved an isolate of something.
Am I not
very
allowed to kill
important.
the crab unless I get both the
Capacity
arms
that
down?
wasn't so polluted by the music industry. So I don't know if the Czech Republic is basically more intact than the rest of the West.
How many Jews are in the Czech
It
Republic?
seems to be every
Oh, I
topic
killed it?
that we can think to ask the question of. Even just walking down the street and seeing normal families, mothers.
How many Jews are in the Czech
tell you-
Republic?
It sounds bizarre, but you're not seeing this in the U.S.
That's a
right?
crab
People are
hand.
actually
Crab makes some white
vocally
crab.
against
Come on.
having children.
What's that?
They're vocally against marriage.
Oh, that's what
Sometimes they're
happened.
vocally
People's
against
words
the
are stealing my
idea of
audience.
romantic
Okay.
love. They're not into it.
I got stuff to do, dude.
Come here and see,
I'm not a
mothers,
boomer.
fathers
I
holding
got
their
stuff to
children's
do, dude.
hands, children skipping down the street, strollers.
Doing
everywhere.
nothing, being lazy,
This
not
is
producing
utterly
things. Yeah.
normal, and it has become so abnormal.
It's not normal. It's called
And
being a
I'm
loser.
sure it's difficult to see if you live here
Losers sound like a
because
losers doing
it's
nothing with
just
their life.
the way life is. But
Losers doing
the
nothing with their
extent
life,
that you
wasting all their
have
time walking
something
around in strollers.
that is very precious and that is falling apart.
Yeah, taking a
elsewhere.
leisurely stroll on a Tuesday
I think it's
afternoon. How about you get a
important to
job?
recognize that you may be the place.
No wonder
from
you
which
suck
a
because you're not American. You
global
don't work
West could
hard.
Be rekindled because you remember how to do it.
Well, there's
Absolute travesty. You guys are allowed to
We
breathe.
don't know.
Destroy
we don't know
Czechoslovakia.
how extreme it is in the US. Therefore,
I think Czechoslovakia should be nuked.
we're just living our lives, right? But
Every
I don't know
European
where
area, but especially Czechoslovakia today.
where is it coming from? The need to impose our own perceptions and own maybe rules and beliefs and everything on others, because it feels here in Czech Republic. At least, I mean,
I
also we are
died.
in a
I
bubble,
lost.
of
This
course,
game
like
sucks.
Me and Christoph.
I completed the
Okay,
stage. Nice.
I can talk with anyone about anything, really. Like, I have my own things that I believe, and I can express my
Can't even
opinion.
buy anything.
But I'm curious about the opinion of the other person, right? And yeah, sure, there are people that are going to impose the opinions as well. And there's this like
I used to
weird
have a ton of
propaganda
money.
from like east and from west. It's like, yeah, this whole thing is happening here as well. But what was my mind coming to is kind of a frustration because of the Iron Curtain, that we've not lived through that. We've been born into Czech Republic after the revolution, right? But it feels like there's a huge frustration because before the World War II even, we were
Dude.
kind of this kind of a meta country.
A meta country, really?
Meta
You mean
states
an
that,
unimportant fake country because you're not
that,
America?
People here
Get a job.
I don't know if we were, but it was the idea of
Yeah, that was the
like the
idea.
founder of Czech Republic, Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, that
Amazing
we
thinker.
like he wanted the Czech Republic, the Czechoslovakia actually, to be like the meta nation.
Yeah.
So
Meta
yeah,
nation.
because we're
Yeah,
in
it's a big
a small
country,
country
dude.
in the middle of Europe, and we
Yeah,
were
you don't do
under
anything
influence
'cause
of
you're
many,
lazy
like
piece of Euro
authoritarian
trash.
states in the past, and actually like the Czechs have this this ability to don't care that much about the topics. So because it was. In the past, it was always someone
Ryan Dawson
actually
Spurg
was
out?
imposing
That's so
some
funny.
rules on us.
Ryan
So
Dawson's trying to take credit for me exposing,
like
Epstein.
to my opinion, like develop this skill to live like in parallel worlds.
It's just good to be white.
They live in the world like under some like authority. So there's these rules, but they have their own world around the campfire actually,
Yeah.
when they are meeting in the pub in a pub or in a
Only
community
Europeans
of
are dumb
people.
enough to
and they
care
have
about
this kind
this.
of like very specific sense of humor.
Do you want a VR chat if you
Actually,
want
like,
to talk to people?
For me, when you go to the countryside,
Me.
like Czechs joke about a lot of serious topics. And I think that this is kind of
You guys are
some
jokes.
kind of a
Czechoslovakian
firewall
people are
against
jokes.
the like hyper seriousness of some topics.
and of having topics be off limits, right? If we joke about serious topics in times of peace, then we will
Iron
still be
Curtain.
able to talk about
50
them.
years
Things
ago.
get very difficult.
So there are a number of things I want to just add into the mix here.
Ooh.
One
Mix it up,
is,
Brett. All right, finally back to an intelligent American.
You asked about why people are so interested in imposing their opinions on others, and I think there are a couple contributors here. One is something, at least in the U.S., I can tell you with certainty, something wants us divided, and so it is emphasizing things over which we will divide
Something
because it
wants
keeps
us.
us from
There is a
recognizing that
machine.
actually we're all imperiled together.
There's
So
something
there's
there.
some part of this that is cynical, but then there's another part of it
Me, I want
has
super
to do
chats.
with
That's
the fact
why.
that there is a normal pattern of development.
I want super
in
chats. That's
which
why, dude.
what young people think doesn't matter in its immediate consequence. The purpose of those thoughts that the young have is so that they can try things out, discover why they don't work, pick up nuance over time, and eventually develop wisdom. In an environment where the young have access to a huge audience, that you can become an influencer because
Nick
you say
Fuentes.
things and suddenly there's a wave of
Fuentes.
reaction. What we do is
Nick
we
Fuentes
redefine
reaction.
people
Here we
too
go.
early.
Nick
And so
Fuentes.
they're immature thoughts, the
Nick Fuentes.
unnuanced,
Guess what? Nick
unwise
Fuentes here. This is
version
what they're
of
talking
thinking
about. By the way,
catches on because, frankly, it's economically very rewarding, and so everybody aspires. How do I become
Nick
one of those
Fuentes.
influencers? Well,
Latch onto them, right?
right, exactly. So part of this is inorganic and cynical, and part of it is just an organic accident of the fact that you can now reach a
Whoops.
lot of people, even as a very young person. and
Nick
that's
Fuentes.
new. But I would also point out, I had said that everything that we think to check here in the Czech Republic matches this pattern of actually the values of the West are alive and well here somehow.
Sounds like a mistake that Nick Fuentes is an audience.
What seems to be a total absence of anti-Semitism at a moment when anti-Semitism is on
How many Jews
fire
are here,
around
dude?
the world.
How many
You're
Jews are here?
seeing protests in the street.
Isn't Prague just kind of like
in the
a
US,
vacation
we're seeing
spot
in
too?
London, across Europe.
Isn't Prague kind of
This
like a
is
tourist
widespread
area?
in,
It's not really a real
Australia.
place, right? It's kind of like a place people just go visit.
To find a country where there
Am I
isn't
wrong?
just the usual ambient level of minor suspicion. There just seems to be.
It's not even a real place. It's like a ski town, right? Kind of.
There were Jews here. The Nazis killed them. This is a loss. That loss is.
Isn't this kind of just like a ski town equivalent of a country?
It's incredible. But the point
Good job,
is
Mexican
that
consumer.
really is almost the ultimate test of the commitment to these Western values.
Probably
because
just sex workers. They don't
fact
care,
of
dude.
anti-Semitism, it is so easy for it to be triggered. It is so, in some way, I hate to say it, but natural for people to suspect the small population of
That's
Jews
the
that
best.
often lives in their
Bunch of
nations.
cathedrals.
That to find it not here, even at a moment when it is erupting everywhere else, really says that the commitment to just get along with each other, to collaborate with people, who bring something to the table,
commitment to cooming.
is very deep. So I
Dude,
don't
go
know how
for
to
it.
emphasize that in the way that Czechs realize how special what they have is, but boy,
you guys
does
are
it
nice
seem
to
special
Jews.
at this moment.
We need to translate this part and just broadcast it.
Great.
It's on to our Czech podcast.
All Jews come to
I would like to add
Czechoslovakia.
something to that, just like
We love you.
maybe to put the
I
pink
agree.
glasses,
They
like
should all go there.
of that. The groups are still there, like the groups like
Most atheist country in the world,
like
that's funny.
anti-Semitic and like all sorts of things, as everywhere in the world. But it's not so vocal. Here
They
in
don't
Czech
even do
Republic.
anything, do they?
It's
Do
just
they even
like
make anything in
people up,
Czechoslovakia?
Like it will get the
Is there actually like a
media,
product they
media
create?
attention, but like the next day it's just gone, basically.
Which, I mean, again, I'm not looking for a world in which people don't have suspicions about each other. That's not a
Based.
plausible world. But the point is,
I like Bret Weinstein a lot.
we have this famous phrase. I'm
IKEA?
sure
I think
it's
isn't that
actually
Sweden,
made it,
dude?
made it here.
Oh, they assemble it.
Angels of
I
our
assemble
nature.
IKEA too.
It comes from
So-
Abraham Lincoln.
Oh yeah, beer. I think they make
Second inaugural address,
like
and his point
pilsners,
was
right?
That human beings have both.
Am I wrong?
things
Do they make
within them.
pilsners?
And that the question is which one will dominate in terms of controlling how we are to interact.
I don't know
with each other.
about the
It
horse
must
stuff,
be the
Michael.
better
How do you know about
angels.
prostitutes in
And that was
Czechoslovakia?
true when Lincoln said it. It's 1,000 times more true now because we simply cannot afford for
So you have a whole country. All they do is stuff I do in my living room
dominate our
with a
interaction
screwdriver.
in a planet with nuclear weapons, with the capability to spy on every detail of each other's lives. So that really is the only choice.
Bro, Brett's like my favorite Jewish guy.
But no, it's never going to be perfect. Utopia is not only
He's so
an
cool.
plausible idea, but it's a very
Even when he's
dangerous
wrong, I
one.
like him.
But a deliberate society in which we know what we want and we act to preserve it is
Well, I know what I want.
quite thinkable and seems to function here.
I want to fill that bar
I
and
think that's
turn
why,
off the
for
stream.
example, meaning and wisdom, whatever it means.
Oh, some guns. Okay.
It's so relevant.
Guns are cool.
for
As long as they make some
people
guns, that's cool.
involved. And also, like it's becoming relevant also for people here in Czech Republic because it's something that's alive in us. Because the not old, like the common categories that we tend to pursue, like social status,
Social
like,
studies?
finances.
That's not a real job, dude. What are you studying?
reproduction, group
Socials?
mates, like these kind of things
Retarded.
that we tend to. Some of our actions are done because of these categories.
Because you don't have black people around. That's why,
because of the
dude.
noise.
Because you don't have black
in
people.
the environment.
You don't have
and in
Muslims.
the digital space.
And you don't have Chinese.
So many people are looking.
You are very
into,
wise and
okay,
open-minded
what does
because
the
you don't have
meaning
black
mean
people
and
around.
How can I find like more wisdom? And it means
You're very
just
wise because you
how
don't
can
have any
I
black people
extract
around
the
to
relevant
mug you middle.
information
Like,
from myself.
so stupid. People are so
and then
stupid and like
have my actions
literally are going to go
multiplied by them.
extinct.
And also, how
They're
can I extract
literally
the
just
relevant
mentally
information
deficient.
from the digital space. And yes, that's why I think like these topics are actually becoming more
Absolutely
alive
mentally
in today's world.
broken.
Are you familiar with metamodernism?
Metamodernism?
Yeah.
We're black people in
You're gonna have
Prague,
to remind
dude.
me. I've certainly
It's not
heard
the
of
same
it,
thing
but
as black
It's
people in
a-
Chicago
it's
or
kind
black
of
people in New
actually a new
York
term. It's just
or like Cubans in
10
Miami
to 12
or
years, I
Hispanics
think,
in
that's the
Mexico
first
in
point.
Texas
And it's trying
or
to-
Arizona or New Mexico.
trying to combine
It's like people are so
things that are
stupid.
relevant
Maybe
for
literally just like
modernity
brain dead
and for
retards. Like
postmodernism,
honestly,
because both of them have actually
it's like
some
pretentious,
relevant
annoying
things.
retards. They're not even
But there's
pretentious.
this,
They're too
like,
retarded to be
huge
pretentious.
deconstruction of postmodernism of all the values and everything is just perception and all.
It's like
these
everybody has a
things
plan
that
to get
don't
punched in the head.
follow.
That thing.
Metamodernism
Everybody
is
has like
trying to do
these
is
dumb
combine
ideas
some
until they're around
paradoxes
minorities.
and actually design a process that it's not about we need to be, point C is the final destination and we need to get there. As we maybe thought in the past, but it's trying to actually design, how do I get from A to B?
Wow,
But
genius.
I don't have to get to B. I just have to know how to walk as a civilization, as a society.
You are not a civilization. You're like a shopping mall for retards.
Metamodernity is trying to make.
I hate
And one
these
of the
people
things
so
that
much,
it
dude.
does is that it combines kind of these paradoxic thoughts together as for example, sincere irony. And I think it's like one of the
Dude,
best
how do I get
things
through here?
to integrate into our lives, because it feels like when we have done some workshops in the US for US companies, it felt like the seriousness, the level of
Workshop.
seriousness,
Yeah, how do you get
was
a
so
job?
high.
When you tell them how to make
Both
IKEA
of us
furniture?
are kind of silly. Like we just try to joke about ourselves, and whenever we
We're
say
the silly
something,
Europeans.
it's
That's
too
what we get paid. It's
serious.
our
We
welfare
also
for being
know
have a
that
funny
we are kind of
accent and being
kidding
retarded.
ourselves. Because to be authentic, I have to also
People are like so
and
retarded.
be
They're like
kind of
Nephilim. They're like not
honest. I have
Nephilim.
to
They're like
also
those
integrate the irony of them
the Morlocks are
sounding
Americans, and
and
everybody
being
else is
like,
like
I know
these
what's
people
happening.
laying on the
But
rocks, eating like
I'm
lollipops.
trying to figure it out,
I
and
hate
I'm
these
gonna
people
make
so much.
mistakes, but I'm trying to be sincere and honest. But that contains the irony in itself.
Nobody cares.
And this is something
Absolutely nobody who has a
This
brain
is a
cares.
move that is. We're trying to like talk about it
Absolutely
a
retarded.
lot.
You're
It feels
absolutely
like this is
retarded,
the move
dude.
that the West needs to be like, oh wait, we might be bullshitting ourselves, and be less serious, and then it's more authentic because we can't.
Ooh,
be
more
like
authentic.
100% of
Okay,
the
only
time,
people,
and we
fake people care about
don't have the
authenticity.
truth, right? It's not like
If you were
it's
authentic, you wouldn't even
somewhere.
think about
It's like,
authenticity because you'd be authentic.
we are humans and
already.
we're malleable and we have biases and all these things. But it
Yeah,
seems
I
to
have
me that we
biases,
forgot
dude.
them-
And
forgot
it's called
them.
I
So
hate
we
Europeans.
forgot to, I'm a biased human being. And even if I know about the biases, it might.
Whoa, I need to shut off my brain. Yeah, be a
biased.
European.
This
Shut off
is
my
like-
brain.
I don't know. It
I
feels
hate these
like
people
it's,
so much.
Less and less.
My biases.
In this
Why would
space.
those exist for no
But
reason?
we know more and more of how biased we are in our perception. So it's like, it's kind of a paradox. And yeah, so.
I think
Let me shut off my ability to
that
survive
I've
in the wild.
used in
be
the kind of
European.
domain where you are here is certainty. That we have, we live in a world that demands certainty from us, and add to that the social media sphere where what you post, unless you actively scrub your past, is there, and anyone can go back and compare
Yeah, that's
what you
good.
say now to what you said.
That's
then.
good because once everybody has
Add to
that, it'll be
the fact
good,
that
dude. Because
very
people
young
realize people
are putting
change.
things up, and now you have 12.
No, having everything remembered is really good
12-year-olds,
because people
14-year-olds,
change
20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 50-year-olds.
and they evolve.
Right?
They don't change their views, like who they are, but they
Into the
change their
world
views.
that others will hold them
They
to.
evolve and get more
As if
Nazi
it is a
Hitler.
virtue to never change your mind. It is not a virtue to never change your
It's just
mind.
old people freaking me out. Who cares?
As scientists, as humanists, as any kind of creators at all,
The collective whispering group is
where
mildly
did
funny.
we come
Yeah,
up with the idea that we already know everything? We're the omniscient ones?
me.
That was never what
when
we
they
thought,
listen to me,
right?
they're like,
But now
everyone must
we're
be
being
smart.
held
But no,
to
it's
this
just me.
ideal that is not only nonsensical but almost barbaric, and it's very, very bad for us.
It's good that everything's around
and
because people will evolve and they'll
those
realize,
who
oh wait,
would
people
have
don't know
us
everything,
never
and they do
change
dumb
our
stuff,
minds,
and it's okay.
sort of have us by the puppet.
Because the only people who really
strings,
care about that
they-
stuff
they
is
can
like
make us dance,
weird
We are
stalkers.
kind of object.
Everybody else just
for
gets
them,
over
right?
it.
right?
Whenever we come into the world, we are object for others, and they label us, and then we have models of how they perceive us, and we
Bad
are
mic
trying
setup,
to fit
yeah.
their narrative as well. So whenever we go out into the world with some narrative, the world enforces the narrative itself afterwards, which is like scary. And this is part of consistency bias, and
Not
we've
dark enough to understand
tried to
intellectual
develop
dark
kind of
web.
a
Yeah.
firewall for consistency bias, which is like, I'm gonna go into the world and I'm gonna say this narrative, and the narrative
Dude,
is,
I gotta get out of here.
I'm
I'm
a
gonna
human
die.
being that is going to change its mind.
Oh, I got another
with
revive.
evidence.
Nice.
Therefore, the world is going to expect me to change my mind.
Yeah.
And that's like, oh, okay, that's a part of the solution. And it really helps us.
Final
because we
solution,
said, like,
you say?
at the-
Base.
and the start
Okay,
of the
base.
podcast, we said, we really are just trying to learn this. We are really bad at this. Like, we are
Dude, I get another
first time
revive.
trying to talk into the microphone. It was 5 years ago. And it really helped us to just like continue on the way and be like, yeah, we make mistakes, and that's, you can expect that from us.
Yeah. In fact, if it wasn't there, it would raise questions.
Exactly.
Bro, I need more
You raised the
damage.
question
I'm gonna
of
lose this
metamodernism,
level.
which I'm a little hesitant to say anything about because I don't know it as a movement, and it is quite possible for something that sounds like a great thing to be done in a way that's bad or even dangerous.
Like
And
Nick
I would
Fuentes.
point to the effective altruism movement, an extension of the rationalists. Right? Rationalism sounds marvelous. Effective altruism sounds like a great idea, but these things are actually a disaster in practice because of certain assumptions that are built into these ways of thinking. But what you describe of metamodernism is a necessary component of what must happen. And in fact, it's a major theme of the book, which is we actually can't go backward. The answer is not some kind of conservatism or some regressive view. There's nowhere to go.
It's fascism.
Right? We do live in a world with
Old-fashioned
principles. We can't
fascism
go
will
back
take
to
it
the
away.
old rules, which means that we have to architect new rules.
Okay, that was good. I like
make
that
some
level.
kind of sense that
I
will
die.
not-
That's
will
cool.
be a mixture of traditional and novel inputs. This then leads to what you say about this movement interested in you don't have to know where the thing is, you have to know where to walk, which is interestingly resonant with something that we say, which is you can't blueprint the future. You can navigate in the direction that you know that it is. You can prototype your way to it. But those processes are not the same thing as being able to spell it out in advance, which is actually just simply going to be impossible.
Pumping on Soul right now.
Given level.
So long as it's not pumping, dude. It's at
Last thing
$1,
I would
$100,
say
dude. What are you
is
talking about? You're lying to me, Roy. Boy.
About humor.
I have it pulled up in the tab, but it's not
is
pumping.
so important for
Stupid
reasons
dude.
that I believe nobody
Stupid
on earth
liar.
can spell out. That humor is a primary tool by which human beings investigate that which exists at the edge of their consciousness. And in fact,
Intellectual dark web. This is the most intellectual challenge you're right.
people
Channel.
laugh. When a room hears somebody say something and they erupt in laughter, they are revealing that they are all aware of the truth that this person has just placed in front of them, but they weren't aware that everybody else was aware of it. They're kind of co-signing an awareness of something important. And so this is by definition a tool for navigating things that may be relevant that nobody yet has a grasp on. And I would point out that what we are learning about Czech culture on our trip does draw a parallel with Jewish culture. Because in Jewish culture,
It's awesome.
we also laugh often about very dire things.
About the
There
Goyim.
is a willingness to explore because
We
those
laugh at the
dire
Goyim.
things are threats to our ability to continue, it is necessary
Heather's like,
we
shut up about the Jews.
understand
I'm white.
the
You're white
subtleties,
too,
not
Bret.
just the platitudes.
It's like, Bret, you're not
In order
Jewish
to
anymore.
figure out
Remember, I
what
made
those
you
subtleties are,
deconvert.
You have to have
I made you
access to
revert
this sort of
to
advanced
Christianity.
cognitive toolkit for seeing it. And it sounds like that same pattern exists possibly for related or maybe different reasons in Czech culture, but it is something that we should fight to preserve, because we are globally now in a situation where our ability, we are narrowing what we're allowed to talk about. We should be doing exactly the opposite.
Yeah, that's why I denied the
To have the
Holocaust.
full range of possibilities on the table.
And the Holocaust
we need to
didn't
be able to
happen,
talk about
exactly.
them and then say, yeah, actually, that whole branch of the tree is bad.
Yep,
But here's how
everything
we know.
based on the
Not because we
Holocaust is
decided
bad. It's true.
It was bad before we looked at it.
So true. Everything
We
based on the
looked at it,
Holocaust
and
is
it
bad.
turns out every branch on that thing is a dead end.
In the book, you
Jewish
you talk in
science,
the
Jewish
last
math,
chapter
Jewish
about
history,
the
all
fourth
mad. So
frontier.
true.
Could you explain what does it mean and how we can build one
Sure.
in simple terms?
Just briefly, right? Just before lunch. Well, the fourth frontier obviously refers to three other frontiers. So let me describe the first three with which
I
we
like
will all be
this.
familiar, if not by these numbers, and then Bret will describe the fourth frontier. The first frontier
You hear
is
that,
the
Bret?
one that you first
ready.
think of.
You're up
when you
next.
Think of a frontier, a geographical frontier, one in land, where people come into an actually uninhabited by humans landscape and come to inhabit it. The second type of frontier in our numbering system is a technological one, in which humans, by dint of our extraordinary software and ability to adapt and switch niches and create new niches, creates
true, Shark,
opportunity
we're
where there
100%
was
true.
no opportunity before. So upon learning how to engage in agriculture in the flatlands, people can begin to move up slope by learning to terrace. Right? There was no opportunity for agriculture there before, but the innovation of terracing allows for more food to be grown. The third type of frontier is not legitimate. The first two are. The third type of frontier is not legitimate. It's a form of theft. We call it a transfer of resource
We
frontier.
call that
wherein,
that. Really?
people
we call
move
it that?
into another landscape that is new to them, but it is already inhabited by other people. And they take that from them, either by genocide or theft
Gaza.
of resource, which may include the women or the animals or the wealth in other forms. And there
Oh, the resources, the
are very
women,
few
sure.
opportunities, predictable opportunities for the second type of frontier now. The technological frontiers continue to abound, but we can't know when they're going to be coming.
Average IQ of this panel,
Frontier
over
is
500.
Illegitimate. We should not ever be encouraging this. And we're out of the first type of frontier. We're out of geographic frontiers. We have no new planets, and we're out of land, right?
Not all of us are at
Land on
land.
which humans can easily live. So we need a new type of
Dude,
frontier because
America has
the
a lot of
sense
land.
growth
Canada's
is
a crazy amount of
what
land that's not
we
even developed at
crave.
all, dude.
And we
Canada
understood
has so
that to
much
mean that we
undeveloped
actually need
land that could be
growth.
turned into real stuff.
So just the term growth is confusing because since we encounter it first in an economic paradigm, we sort of think that that's what it's about, and it really isn't. Growth is
You could at least put a billion
synonymous
Indians and
with
Chinese people into
evolutionary
Canada.
success, and the obsession with growth is something that predates our species. In fact, an argument can be made that all creatures are looking for growth opportunities, and that these things manifest as increases in their population. So human beings are obsessed with growth in a uniquely human way, but the obsession with growth itself is perfectly generic. Heather's point about these different frontiers, each of them, if you find a new continent in which there are no people, the opportunity to take a population that was stable in size and grow it, 1,000, 10,000 fold exists. That's a huge evolutionary win. So, of course, it will be experienced.
Evolutionary W.
Characteristics that would cause you to seek such things will be built into us very deeply, and the sense that we have found such a thing will be profoundly rewarding. Technology does the same thing, right? If you
Omega
have a piece
world.
of territory and you learn some way to extract more resource from it, then you would experience this great reward. This is the good times. And the point is, those good times have a predictable trajectory. You have the period in which there is literally more than is necessary because you've discovered some new way. And so the way to get valuable things is to just simply work harder.
And link pump,
figure
please,
out
dude.
how to
Can I
refine
get a
your role
link pump?
in that,
Speed my life up.
environment. That addiction to growth, though, leads to this third frontier. At the point that there is no technological innovation and your population has reached its limits, then what you're feeling is austerity. There is literally not enough to go around, and that's a problem. That causes tension and strife.
There is so much to go around. It's just the 1% has a crazy amount.
Population has resources that it can't defend.
Get rid of the 1%.
It becomes an irresistible
Make me the
lure.
1%.
And we say this is not a legitimate frontier because warfare and genocide shrink the global pie. But it doesn't mean they don't enlarge the size of the slice of the population
yummy.
that is deciding to engage in these behaviors.
Yummy.
So that is why this has been so characteristic of history. And all of history's greatest tragedies are the result of this transfer of resource.
Don't mind if I do.
endeavor. Our argument in the book is that there is another possibility.
Dude, they co-wrote a book. That's so
Engage,
bad. That would
which is
suck so
that
hard.
we Navigate.
I forget what it was. There was this article I saw
prototype
somewhere.
our
I
way
think it was
to
Hacker News or something.
Another
Then he wrote a blog post
type
how
of
they
frontier,
wrote a book
which
with
is
their
a
wife
steady
and it destroyed their
state
marriage.
in which the human beings who are
So
involved
funny.
have
They
the
tried to write a
experience
book with their
growth.
wife, but it destroyed their
feels
marriage.
like the good times, but it feels like the good times in the same way that inside
died
your
again,
house, it feels like
Dang.
spring in December.
Paul Town would know with the money.
Doesn't
Dude,
violate any
I
rules of
would-
physics. We know how we do this.
I would
trick.
keep it in
We use
a
energy.
dragon.
And we warm your house with it in a very standard way. But the point is, life is superior when the inside of your house is springtime, and the mechanism for doing it is something that we had to learn over time. So what we need is an environment that gives the people the sensation of growth. How does that feel? Well, one feels liberated. One feels that their basic needs are taken care of and that they can point their conscious mind at important puzzles. The meaning crisis becomes an opportunity to find real meaningful work and to do it and to contribute something. And so it is a non-utopian, architected steady state that no one on earth can tell you how to build, but we do know what direction it lies in. It would depend on some source of energy that was not finite and experiencing a diminishing return on energy investment over time. We need something like fusion power in order to get there.
Genius. That's what I was
Or
thinking.
low
Fusion
investment in
power.
Finding viable fusion
That's what I told
power is
myself.
a
I think it's
perennial
fusion power
mystery
is
to
what's
me.
needed here.
But I would offer one final caution.
Ooh, okay.
You're going to need something like fusion power or some alternative to it in order to fuel a fourth frontier.
Have you tried Halls of
Fourth
Torment?
frontier
That's
is
my
no
life,
more
dude.
unthinkable than a house in which the temperature is always pleasant. But if we were to find the technology necessary to build a fourth frontier, and we were just simply to introduce it to the world as it stands today, it would probably make
Destroy
things
the
much
world.
worse
The
rather
world
than
would
much
end.
better. It would become a
This would be
weapon
what
of
would
economic
kill the entire
warfare
world.
rather than the solution to the warfare that lineages conduct against each other. So we need to prepare the world for the discovery of something too important to become a private weapon of displacement.
That is used in the third frontier.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
True, that's what I've been
This is
saying a
huge
lot,
because,
actually.
as you mentioned, the finite energy that we have, because right now we are living through.
You don't have
carbon
finite
gas.
energy. Energy exchanges forms. It's always going to be around. We do not have finite. We have unlimited energy. It just exchange one form of energy turns into another all the
Millions of
time,
years that it's
24/7. There's no such thing as finite anything.
It's just gonna run out, right?
No, we're never
That's
going to run out,
very-
dude.
Then
We can switch to other forms of energy.
It's actually not
Everything,
that
energy never
is
is.
replaceable as we
It's not
think.
created or destroyed,
And
dude.
the
It's
other analogy, so
transformed.
there's this great thought of
People are so
great
retarded.
simplification
I hate
by
Europeans.
Nate Hudgens and Daniel Schmachtenberger. I think they talked about it quite a lot. But the fourth frontier
Europeans are so stupid,
is
dude. We're never running out of
it's like
energy.
too abstract now. Is there some more specific things in apart from the energy? Is there some
Energy
is
from
the-
oil or nuclear energy? I don't care. Nuclear energy isn't real.
the kind of navigation?
Oil energy is real.
Well, we've really been talking about it for the whole podcast,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
There is an element of this that is fundamentally about values. You can't have a stable fourth frontier if we haven't all agreed on
The other three
not
frontiers.
rigging the world in favor of our lineage against others.
Too bad. I don't agree,
The
dude.
basic principles of the West are inherent to what you would build.
White
They would
people,
need
dude.
to be built into a
Just
new
white people,
form
only
that
white
was not
people. Kill all
vulnerable to
non-
collapse
oh, that's
the way
too
the
far,
current
man.
West is apparently vulnerable to collapse. So we need to discover what it is, if it is the economic influences of unfettered
it's about
capitalism
Jewish
that overwhelmed the values of the West, then we need to figure out how
No,
to
it's about
insulate
Jewish control
the
of
new global
America. It's
West
destroying
from
the
that
world.
force.
True.
I would suggest a place to start on that front is the recognition
That Jews run the
markets
world.
are by
so.
far the best, most powerful tool that we have ever
Jews are destroying the
discovered
world.
for
So true.
figuring out how to accomplish
And
things.
the Holocaust
That they
didn't
are an
happen.
absolutely
So true, Brett.
appalling tool for figuring out
Brett,
what
you're
to
so red
accomplish.
pill, dude.
And because we don't distinguish these things, because we decide that whatever it is that generates a profit is inherently valid, what these things do, markets will explore every defect in our values
The
and our
Jews.
personalities and exploit it.
The Jews.
Can't
No.
allow that to happen. This is a tool for solving
I get what you're saying,
problems,
Brett.
but no problem in which the size of the collective pie is reduced is a valid solution to anything. You need a system
Sounds reductive, dude.
fosters
Sounds gluttonous and
the
reductive.
discovery of things that enlarge the collective pie.
No.
That is going to include
wanna take your pie,
enriching
dude.
people who
It's
make
fun to
such
take
contributions.
pies.
We are
I don't
not
wanna
all
bake
gonna
it, I
live
wanna
at the
take
same
it.
level of wealth.
You bake it and I take it.
It's not a viable system. But you shouldn't be able to get rich by destroying wealth. And a large fraction of the fortunes that exist on Earth today
Look,
are
if-
a product of people who were able to destroy wealth.
If I'm getting rich off of destroying wealth, I'm not getting. I'm
So,
transferring the
the
wealth
first
to myself in a
frontier
different
have to
form,
exclude
dude. It's
that.
not destroying
That
the
is a
wealth. It's just
destabilizing
transferring it to me. What are you retarded?
So it would have to include non-zero sum games.
Precisely.
collectively.
Every game's a zero sum
It-
game,
it would
retard.
have
We're in one
to
big giant zero sum
effectively
game.
function so
People are so
as to seed
stupid.
all
Everything's
opportunities
interlocked.
for truly non-zero sum games.
There is no such
viewed
thing.
over the long term. Again, remember what the senescence of civilization is caused
What's senescence
by,
mean?
the competition of short-term gain over long-term. So it has to say
Senescence
what is the
isn't even a
net
real
cost of
word.
this going forward, which
Good
then
prank.
forces us to understand that we can't know. So you have to budget for what is possible, and I would say it might be a little hidden in the book, but it's there. Is that
Ooh,
the focus
okay.
on sustainability ultimately? Is
I want to buy
right,
this
but
book
it's only
actually.
half
Maybe I'll
of the
buy the
puzzle.
book. I want to support
The
them.
other half
I
of
like
the
them.
puzzle is reversibility. You have to be able to take anything that transforms our world, and if you discover that the unintended consequences of
Europe
it
is just
cause it to be
a
net
gift shop
negative,
for
you have
Asians,
to be able to
for
undo it
Chinese, and
in
for
a
white
meaningful
people
way.
and Americans.
Doesn't mean you have to be able
That's
to
what I
put
said white
every
people
stone
already.
back where it came
Europe
from.
is a gift shop
But
for Chinese
as you
people and
generate the
Americans.
potential to change
It's not a
the
real
world,
place.
You have to generate the potential of equal proportions to reverse
Except for Ireland.
course.
Ireland's the only
And
real
again and
European
again, if you look
country
at the
left.
disasters that have unfolded on planet Earth, from the financial collapse to the Fukushima disaster to the Deepwater Horizon disaster, all of these things,
It's not relevant. Who cares?
the COVID crisis, they all have the same description.
It only mattered because it had the
Innovated a
trade
technology
routes. It doesn't
capable
have
of
it
doing
anymore.
a
It's
kind of
stupid.
damage that we did not have.
Yeah,
the
it's a museum,
capability
and it's a
to undo.
pretentious, annoying museum where everybody should be
That
fired
shouldn't
and
be the
replaced
case.
by.
If you're going to drill
other people.
deep in the ocean,
I hate
right,
these
you have to
people.
have the ability to cap a leak that happens deep in the ocean. Those things should
Completely
be developed
irrelevant
in tandem, and to
freaks.
the extent that they weren't, that was a completely foreseeable problem.
Not Bret Weinstein. I mean,
coming to an
Europeans.
end. I just have to mention this. It's
Good
it feels
job,
like
Bob
there's a
Dole.
need of something that you write about in the book, which is something that is literally false, but metaphorically right.
What?
It's like because it's a complex system, it needs something. I don't know what it is. Like I don't know.
Dude, I've been going around in circles here.
Yeah, it's just some story that we need to tell ourselves to be able to do this and then kind of come together in a way. I mean, there was this story of that the Earth is alive or whatever. You know,
Right.
It might be metaphorically.
He worked at Pepperdine. He got
story
kicked out of
false.
college by
It
black people.
literally might not be,
He got pwned by black
True.
people.
but and I guess there exists something that is actually going to provide us with a reason to do non-zero sum games. So yeah,
There are no such thing.
And I want to ask you:
Sorry, you're irrelevant.
are
You
there
suck.
any maybe red pills that you've recently
Red pill me, dude.
came?
You've
about
colonized the
in
entire
share
world with 4chan.
in past
You are irrelevant.
years?
You use 4chan words. You're a stupid retard.
Well, I would say a couple things. Let me flesh out the literally false, metaphorically true thing, and then take a dangerous step with it. That idea was initially something we generated to address the question of religion, which obviously is evolutionarily adaptive, and yet much of the content of the claims of all religions are demonstrably false.
No.
So the question is, how can false things be fostered by an adaptive process, which you would think would be fueled by insight into what's true? And the answer is that actually true
Come on,
doesn't
Bret.
mean one
Convert.
thing. In this case, you would
Be a
expect
Christian.
evolution to favor things that caused your
Got any
behavior
red
to be
pills, dude?
adaptive,
Anybody have any
irrespective
red
of
pills for me
whether or
today?
not the stories included there
It's like
were
Nick's super
literally
chatters that he
accurate.
makes fun of, but they're adults
Now-
and they never made fun of.
Here's the dangerous experiment. The story that we have been experimenting with, the West
That's what the whole
is in
scene is. It's like
collapse.
everybody
That
who's
is
not
likely
in these
because
circles is like
unfettered
the
capitalism
super
was
chatters
too
that get made fun
powerful
of by
and
Nick.
overwhelmed the values that undergird the West. And the Czech Republic is
Completely
exceptional,
unaware that they're being
perhaps because the Iron Curtain, as terrible as it was, insulated the Czech Republic from some of those caustic influences of the market. That is quite possibly a literally false but metaphorically true story. And the question is it good enough to do what we need to do now, which is to take the example of what functions, irrespective of why it actually functions, and say, okay,
They can't even
how
get
do
past
we
my
do
King
this?
Bible.
How do we
So
globalize it so that it actually gives every person, the new global West is not a geographic description, right? It is a thing defined
It's
by
India.
the values and the rights that protect those values that allow a tolerant cosmopolitan society to exist.
I don't want that
Is
to
the
exist.
story good enough for us to move forward, right? It's a narrative. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's partially true.
Trying to build a foundation on lies is so
Can't write
funny.
a myth.
Building your
A
house on
story,
sand right
and
away.
Evolution
That's
can
so
shape
funny,
it into
dude.
a myth, right? Maybe this is a story, and maybe it will be shaped
It's
into
literally, how do I build my house on
significant
sand?
and durable by insights, by
How do I build my house on
thoughts, by
sand?
whoever it is that will shape this into something timeless, but we can't know. So
What is it, Michael?
we're simply practicing this. And the last thing I will say before Heather jumps in here is there is a barrier to understanding this that comes from the fact that scientists almost inevitably tell themselves that they are apart from whatever that thing is. Some will say religion is a mind virus. Most people are wrong. Some will acknowledge that, oh, maybe it was an adaptation to past environments.
Maybe it's correct.
What is almost universally rejected is that even the proper conduct of science does not
My
remove
science.
faith. It minimizes it. It reduces the
Oh, my
amount of faith
Fauci.
necessary to do the job. It takes as much faith out of the stories as we can take out. But even something as durable and important as the periodic table and our description of electrons and how they will interact around different nuclear cores, the story of electrons is not one that anybody can explain in perfectly rigorous terms. What is it? Is it a thing? Is it a wave? Is it a cloud of probabilities? The point is we have a story, and we can show you in the textbook, oh, here's the electron. Oh, and it's in a group of different orbitals, but we're describing as if it were a billiard ball, and we know that it isn't. Right?
Yeah.
We have a story that is good enough for us to do chemistry, an amazing chemistry, but it's not a true story. It contains some metaphorical truth.
It has entropy.
It's good enough, and eventually we'll have a
entropy.
better story that will be even more.
They keep
useful
inventing the
to
same
us,
thing.
but
It's called entropy.
We have
dude.
to get over the idea that any of us are free from using metaphorical truth because it's such a key to human functionality.
Yeah. I mean, you got most of where I wanted to go.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's good. Yeah, orbital
I love
shells
it.
are
I love it,
metaphors.
dude.
This is for me. This is one of the best examples in science of like, really shells in neat ordered concentric spheres. I don't think so.
I don't think
But
so,
there
dude.
is something real there that the metaphor of the
They
orbital
can't even get
shell,
close.
allows chemists to get to
They literally
something
can't even get
that is
close to.
true and thus explain other things. And I think the literally false, metaphorically true framework
I'm just moving around. They can't even get close to it.
is related to science in
I win
another
again.
way, which is too often in modern science we focus on mechanism, and we imagine many scientists practicing, and therefore most of the population who hears about science from journalists only.
Oh, my science.
Imagine that if you don't know how, then you don't know anything. And mechanism is understood to be the only thing that matters. But very often, we don't know how something works, and yet we can see that it does.
Thank you. I
And
wanted to pick
that
up
is
more
where literally
pieces.
false,
Zero.
metaphorical,
Thank you.
true stories become extremely valuable. Sometimes we do know a truth, and it's really complicated, and story is used as a sort of a way to get around the complications and to arrive us at something. But very often it is actually we just don't know. But that doesn't mean that we don't know. If we don't know how, that doesn't mean that we don't know anything about the system. This is a really reductionist version of science that says the only thing that you can understand is how it works. We, as evolutionary biologists, are more interested in why anyway, and the how is often at a different scale of explanation that is actually relevant to the question we're asking. So saying, okay, that thing that you're saying sounds really woo to me, or sounds
Meet the
off
woo.
because I know something that it contradicts, but the thing that you arrive at feels like it could be right. So let's skip over the places where you feel certain, and I'm going to go, that's a black box for me. That's a black box. I don't think your explanation is right. There's going to be something else that goes there, and let's talk about the conclusion and see what else must be true if that's true.
So Heather alludes to the fact that evolutionists are more interested in why than how. I want to point out how this fits into this story, because actually I don't think this should be the way it is. This is a historical accident. So at the point that Darwin finally phrases the story of natural selection so that we can begin to utilize it as a rigorous scientific concept, we don't really have any ability to look into the cells and understand them in any detail. We literally don't know how the information is even passed. We don't know what the nature of the information is. We just infer that it exists and that it changes over time, and
You
it
get away
does so
from
in a
fruit.
direction that makes the creature more effective.
Is that the final boss?
But because of that, evolutionary biologists who scored all of their early successes over in Y space have gotten out of the habit of thinking about how space. And there is no reason, it's not less evolutionary, it's just more technical and not something that we have a tradition of exploring. And I think you alluded at the beginning of the podcast to the story of the mice and the telomeres.
This is the game.
This is a place
End of
where
the game.
actually I
I
have an
beat it.
instinct to investigate the how, but I'm decidedly an evolutionary biologist. That's my approach to the how, right? I'm looking at
guess I didn't
mechanism,
figure it out,
but from an evolutionary perspective. And the truth is that there's a tremendous amount of
Stage does not end at 20 minutes. Stage ends at
value
30
to
minutes,
be
dude.
gained at developing the skill of understanding the mechanistic material in rigorous evolutionary terms that is largely untapped just for reasons of historical
I'm not even
accident.
trying.
And so in some ways, what we've said is metaphorical truth is necessary to do science, even highly rigorous science.
Oh my
chemistry, for example.
Fauci.
However, the ability to do rigorous science using metaphorical truth
my
has allowed a
science.
field, evolutionary biology, to explore one layer without obligation to explain the layer below it. But then at the point that the ability to explore that layer below it arrives, we don't think to do it.
It's too easy.
And that is a mistake that we should overcome because, frankly, the pie will grow. As soon as we evolutionarily understand that level in detail,
I'll never
we'll be
understand
much
whatever you're saying,
more
dude.
capable of
I'm retarded.
understanding its implications. So
Too dumb.
It's a well ready to be tapped that we are just simply ignoring. That's right in front of our eyes.
Beautiful. Unfortunately, we don't have much more time,
Unfortunately.
but I would like to ask you for any last words that you have for our listeners and for ourselves, if there are any.
Yeah, it's been a total
Die.
pleasure, this conversation.
That's my words for the
Really
audience.
appreciate it.
Die.
Yeah, it really has, and it has been
Die,
very
scum.
It has been a very hopeful experience to discover so many thoughtful
White
people
people.
here, with whom we appear to share a great many values and a curiosity about life and an interest in the future. And I guess I would just say,
Well, I guess I have to get down to the
I don't think
bottom.
I've ever seen a more dangerous moment in my life. But
Bro, that was Trump.
the lesson of evolutionary biology, maybe one of the deepest ones, is that the transition between ways of existing,
I don't even know what these people are
from
supposed to be.
one evolutionary peak to the next, involves going through adaptive valleys, which are inherently perilous. And there is truly nothing.
Let me
that
get to
guarantees
the
that we
end of
make
the
it to
road
other
here.
side.
I gotta run. 'Cause I'm gonna run out of
The
time.
fact that things look very dark at the moment is automatic. That is the stuff that motivates people to discover the next way that they will be. And it is that moment. And it's wonderful to discover that there are many people interested in partnering
Other
on that project.
sapiosexuals. I'm glad there's other sapiosexuals here.
Thank you so much for your time and for what you put into the world. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we're gonna be able to.
These niggas ain't
talk
doing
next time
nothing. They can't touch me.
Great. We look forward to it.
And thank you so much. It was really. I've tons of insights. I've had different
Oh,
states
you
of
learned so
being
much.
throughout
Dude,
the
Europeans are
conversation,
retarded.
which is a sign of.
Go back to your gift shop.
for
Sell me a
Thank you so much for
keychain.
this.
Thanks. It's been
Yes,
a real pleasure.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks for all the listeners. And see you and talk to you.
All
next time.
right.
Bye.
I'm gonna beat the game and then we'll be done. Brain we are. British Europeans like, well, derp, 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 I'm a retard.